Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became unbreakable part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below. And let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗧𝗵𝗲 from fanfiction. So let's start the video. It was not unusual for shouting to be heard from the Midoriya house. Nor was it uncommon for there to be sounds of women crying. The scene would play out with routine, a sad and terrible routine. Hisashi would stumble drunk, angry that his dinner was not hot and waiting. Ignoring that he was 3 hours late or more and gave no notice, he was on his way home. 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲, the mother, would try to send her daughter Izumi to bed, hoping to spare the girl, but it rarely, if ever, did. 𝗵𝐴 did everything she could to spare her daughter, begging, pleading, and debasing herself all she could think of. There had been a house phone once, but after Izumi had tried to call the police earlier, it was swiftly removed from the wall by force and used to teach both women a lesson. Once when 𝗵𝐴 had dared to reach out for help, she had made the unfortunate error of talking to a police officer who was friends with her husband. He was the pro-hero Fire Breath. After all, the worst nights were when he didn't come home alone. Sometimes the pros umpire, the baseball hero or speed freak, would join him. Or he would bring home some groupies he had picked up at the bar and force 𝗵𝐴 to watch depraved acts. Izumi did her best to block it out, but a pillow over the head only drowned out so much noise. Back to the routine, 𝗵𝐴 tried to distract Hisashi, but on some nights, it was impossible. He would stumble in, demand food, and strike 𝗵𝐴 before ordering his daughter to stand before him. The girl would come to do so, head down, already cowed. He would then start asking questions about school, her rankings, and her quirk. When the answers weren't how amazing school was, ranked number 1, or that she still hadn't manifested her quirk yet. The doctors told her it was there, but she hadn't figured it out yet. Not that he allowed her to go to quirk counseling or anything. Then they would see the bruises. Izumi already had a nervous stutter from the abuse, and it only would get worse when she was scared, which was all the time. This would infuriate Hisashi to no end. When she would stutter, he would slap her, which only made the stutter worse. Rinse and repeat. 𝗵𝐴 would try to interfere only to meet with a slap or vicious punch to the gut. The violence would dissolve to him, indistinctly attacking the two girls as they huddled together, trying to cover the other. When it was over, he would stumble away, and they would retreat to Izumi's room, 𝗵𝐴 trying to soothe her daughter while ignoring her pain. It is said that abusers have a way of sensing abuse victims. They can subconsciously recognize the signs, and it pulls them in. School should have been some reprieve, but it was a different type of hell. The devil that tormented her was Katsuki Bakugo. He was the son of her mother's friend, though Hisashi had made sure to cut all forms of communication. And when Izumi would desperately plead with Bakugo to pass a letter on, he would sneer and loudly proclaim that no way in hell would he accept a love letter from her and destroy the plea for help. Izumi would beg him to pass the note on, telling him it wasn't a love letter, but he would ignore it. Her cowering nature just set him off. Factor in her lack of a visible or provable quirk, his overt ego, and his predator nature, and he would bully her relentlessly. First, it was because when they were little, she proclaimed that she wanted to be a hero, even without a quirk. When her quirk wouldn't manifest, she would stubbornly stand before him while he was crushing pebbles and try to stop him. Then she would snivel and cry all the damn time. It just would grate on his nerves. She would have the audacity to try and compete with him in class, but try for the top score. The occasional love letter, as if he would ever consider being with such a piece of trash. This Deku. Here her father was in the top 30 heroes, a former sidekick of Endeavor, and he had such a useless thing for a daughter. It disgusted Bakugo to no end, and he made sure to let Izumi know day after day after day. Now a rational thought would be to go to the principal or counselor for help. When Izumi did so, it earned her mother a broken arm. When it did seem like someone was going to step in, they suddenly disappeared. The pro-hero strobe listened and assured Izumi that she would help, only to vanish without a trace. Izumi had lost all hope. She was practically quirkless, beaten down. All she could do I dream, but even those were slipping away. The only dream she would hold on to was a day without a beating. Her 10th birthday was the day everything changed. The day she had progressed normally: morning beating, verbal abuse, after-school torment, few hours of tenuous peace at home, door opening, her father walking in. 𝐒𝐭 had made a small cake for her daughter's birthday. They had enjoyed it immediately upon her arrival home, quickly hiding all evidence. He arrives loudly, calling directly for Izumi. When she comes down, he throws a notebook at her and a dollar store pack of pens, slurring a happy birthday. Izumi thanked her father as if he just bestowed upon her the crown jewels. It is an attempt to mitigate the routine. Everything erupts when his dinner is not presented to him hot enough. 𝗏𝐭 isn't even allowed to bow and ask for forgiveness when he proclaims he will do it himself. His quirk roars to life, lighting part of the kitchen on fire. Izumi runs to grab a fire extinguisher, only for a backhand to collide with her chest, sending her sprawling. 𝗏𝐭 uses her quirk to pull the device to her and tries desperately to use it. Useless, the both of you. All I demand is subservience from those I provide for, and all I get is an abject failure. Imagine the rise in popularity I will get when tragedy befalls the great fire breath. 𝗏𝐭 immediately pleads for their daughter's life, offering the pyre. Izumi tries to run past him into the street, only to be snatched by her hair and thrown over the kitchen island like a rag doll. 𝗏𝐭 cradles Izumi, using her quirk for all it's worth, trying to hurl objects at the man who will try and kill them. Hisashi laughs as he bats away the more prominent things and ignores the smaller ones. Looming over them, Izumi sees the green light building in his throat, a telltale precursor to what is about to erupt. Quietly, desperately, she reaches for her quirk. It's inside her, just under the surface. Maybe it was certain death staring at her right in the face. But it is different this time. The slight tingle is replaced by a roar of an animal screaming to be let loose. As the fire erupts from her father's mouth, she flings her hands forward to oppose death. The fire never touches them. A shield of faint white has formed in front of the terrified girl, the fire wrapping around them, but not touching them. The heat is intense. Hisashi stumbles back in shock. Izumi knows it won't last long. She screams from all the pent-up pain, all the pent-up anger, from a pit of rage held so deep she didn't even know it was there. The shield explodes, destroying the house and extinguishing the fire from sheer force. Hisashi was thrown violently from the house. Standing in the rubble with her mother at her feet, struggling to stand, stood Izumi. The shield pulled back to her, cracked but holding as she stalked forward. She was unthinking about the commotion or the neighbors pulling out cell phones to record while others phoned the police. Useless. Why can't you just die so you can be useful to me for once, you wretched girl? You don't even have the dignity to be pretty so that I could sell you for something useful like a case of scotch. He rose, launching his fire breath at her. The shield was still intact, holding for the moment as the cracks began to increase in spiderweb. It was all the encouragement that Hisashi needed, stalking forward, billowing out more flames, driving his daughter to her knees. 𝗏𝐭 leaped wildly at him. He snatched her by the throat out of midair, strangling the life out of her. Izumi pushed the shield forward, trying to shape it into a pillar. She succeeded. It momentarily stopped the onslaught of fire, and her mother was dropped to the ground gasping for air. Izumi struggled to her feet, but Hisashi rushed forward with a heavy fist. The shield shattered as Izumi tumbled away. He was on her instantly, his hands around the poor girl's throat. Frantically, she clawed at her throat, her mind going hazy. A pressure was inside of her. It filled up suddenly, like if it didn't release, she would explode. Without out-conscious thought, she focused it on her hand. She weakly punched at the man strangling her. The impact was minuscule, but the force that erupted inside her exploded through her writing, breaking her arm. But Hisashi was launched off of her like he had been hit by All Might himself. As he tumbled into the street, he did not immediately rise. Pain exploded everywhere for Izumi, her arm, then her head. The last thing she saw was her mother rushing to her, cradling her in her arms before the world went dark. Hisashi slowly rose to his feet, his eyes finding 𝐭 cradling Izumi, who had blood pouring from her nose and ears, a broken right arm from the punch she had landed on him. His mind was in terrible pain. The ringing in his ears was drowning almost everything else out. It was a sign of an apparent concussion. He stumbled forward, ready to end this. A mighty roar built in his throat. A pink gas filled the area. Turning, he saw that whore Midnight. "You bitch," he sputtered out as he fell to the ground. Midnight, she had never liked Fire Breath from when she debuted in what we should call an exciting fashion choice to later in life, whenever she had the unfortunate opportunity to cross paths with the man. From the unwanted advances to even more unwanted touches, he was on the list of people she would have to consider saving from a burning building. Now she was in front of his destroyed home, him in handcuffs because she came upon the scene of him about to attack a mother and child. A child who had fought the disgusting pro-hero, but had passed out due to overusing some unknown quirk and suffered a broken arm. As she contained the scene, the family's neighbor to the east came forward with the battle video and said they had heard and witnessed Fire Breath beating his wife and child. Then another bravely came forward. Then another, all with video and the same stories. When the pros umpire and speed freak, a little girl pulled Midnight down to a knee to whisper how she had often seen those two over at her neighbor's house. Discreetly, she called President Mike and 𝐒𝐴racerhead, requesting immediate backup. When questioned, she responded with code 45. Questionable backup present, unsafe. The two friends from school reacted immediately with an ETA. Midnight had to play the stalling game until others arrived. When she radioed code 54. Questionable police present, need outside assistance. More calls ran over secure channels. Soon the local officers were met with detectives from the Hero Division as 𝐒𝐴racerhead arrived. She pulled her friend to the side and explained what she had learned from the neighbors, and that umpire seemed a little too keen on escorting the mother and daughter to the hospital for her taste, and Speed Freak wanting to handle Fire Breath. Midnight, she was smoothly stepping in for the scared mother, offering to ride with her to the hospital, being a woman. 𝐭 quickly agreed to choose the possible devil she didn't know for the one she did. 𝐒𝐴racerhead convinced Speed Freak that it would be best for them to escort Fire Breath to a different hospital so finer doctors could look him over. Speed tried to make futile arguments, but the underground hero quickly shut him down. The ambulance ride was quiet. When 𝐭 went to talk, Midnight just put her finger up to signal that she was not there. They arrived quickly at the emergency room, and Izumi was rushed into treatment. Midnight escorted the mother to a private room before she turned to the shaking brunette. "Is your husband abusing you?" 𝐭 knew that tonight Hisashi had intended to kill the two of them, that if she were to return to him, he would follow through. So many times, she had put her trust in other authority figures to be hurt, but it was now or never. Hisashi would recover quicker than Izumi due to his status as a pro-hero. At that point, he would be here taking Izumi to God only know where to do who knows what. 𝐭 couldn't abandon her daughter in some attempt to save herself. "He is abusing me and my daughter," her eyes welled with tears, pleading to the heroine to save them. "Please, you have to help us. He will try and take her. Izumi's quirk manifested when he tried to kill us tonight, which is why we are alive." 𝐭 lifted her shirt to show the bruises, burns, cuts, and scars. "We tried to get help, but he is so well connected. Please, Miss Midnight, if you don't do something, we are as good as dead." Fire Breath was in the top 30. This would be difficult. She needed help. Midnight thought about leaving the room to call, but she knew the mother was anxious, thinking Midnight might betray them. Others had. Instead, she pulled out her phone and called the most intelligent person and the most excellent doctor she knew. Nezu's chipper voice answered. Midnight put the phone on speaker so there would be no secrets for 𝐻𝐽. She laid out the situation, the video the neighbors had taken, what they had heard on the video, their statement of abuse, the mother's statement of abuse, and the attempted murder. 𝐻𝐽 didn't understand who was on the other side of the phone, but she heard an animalist growl as the person gave orders. Sent all the videos to the servers at the school. Take as many photos of the wounds on Mrs. Midoriya and her daughter. Record her testimony and send it all to the school servers immediately. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 and ectoplasm will interview the neighbors and do the same. When a member of the Hero Commission arrives, and I expect that to be in the next 5-10 minutes, do not go anywhere with them. Mrs. Midoriya, do not exit the room with them. Please do not take anything from them. Please do not allow them into the room with your daughter. Midnight, I don't care if you have to gas the hospital. Do not let them into that room. I am one now with Vlad King. 𝐻𝐽 was wide-eyed as the conversation ended. Who was that? Midnight, he looked to 𝐻𝐽. That was Nezu, the principal of UA. And he is pissed. Let me call one more person, and we can take the photos and your testimony. The second call was short. An older woman's voice sprang to life from the other side. Nezu just informed me. Honey, I am on my way. I called a friend there. She is going to take over the daughter's case. Do what you need to do. Midnight then had to ask 𝐻𝐽 to disrobe so she could photograph the visible wounds. 𝐻𝐽 was uncomfortable with it. But if this were finally a chance for her and Izumi to escape, she would have to do it. Sure enough, a duo from the Hero Commission arrived no sooner than they had finished, and they were standing out in front of her daughter's room, waiting to see her. They immediately tried to pull 𝐻𝐽 aside to talk with her, but 𝐻𝐽 refused. They offered coffee, and 𝐻𝐽 said she was too nervous to drink anything. When they offered to wait with her, she politely declined, saying that she would prefer the company of Midnight, as the two of them had met a hero gala and had gotten on rather well. When the commission officers said they would wait in the waiting area and left, Midnight looked to the woman whose shoulders visibly sank once they had left. That was very impressive, 𝐻𝐽. Midnight said. If I don't do all I can, he will finish the job. Please, Midnight, don't make me a fool for trusting you, 𝐻𝐽 responded, wringing her hands. Nomiuri, Midnight said. My name is Nomiuri. You should know that since we hit it off at a gala. 𝐻𝐽, I promise you that even if I must gas this hospital, I will save you and Izumi. Save her. If it comes down to it, save my daughter. If, for some reason, it comes down to that, you savor her cause I am going down swinging to get you two out of this. Midnight extended her hand to the 𝐻𝐽, who slowly took it. They sat silently until the doctor retrieved them to review the child's injuries. Midnight fought back the tears as the doctor detailed the injuries the young girl had suffered. Not only tonight, but the history of abuse road mapped upon the young girl's body. The list of burns, scars, cracked ribs, and history of concussions was extensive and heartbreaking. The girl was undernourished, as was 𝐻𝐽. Her arm had been broken from the fight. There was some bleeding in the brain's parietal lobe due to her quirk usage. There shouldn't be any permanent brain damage, but his kind of repeated brain trauma, on top of years of other head trauma, was perilous and needed to be addressed. An older woman with a cane entered, introducing herself as Recovery Girl, and immediately grabbed the chart and began to read, her knuckles turning white as she visibly angered. With permission from 𝐻𝐽, she examined the girl. I can speed up her healing that would make her sleep for a while. We must get her statement to help get the order of protection for her and you. 𝐻𝐽 nodded. Then wake her up, please. I understand that time is of the essence. They placed some smelling salts under the girl's nose, and immediately she tried to bolt upright. Midnight and 𝐻𝐽 held her down, calming her, and quickly her mother explained the situation. Izumi could process that they were temporarily safe, and that this was their only chance of truly being safe. Midnight recorded her testimony of the abuse and what had happened tonight, particularly the circumstances that led to Izumi awakening her quirk and all she could remember. When asked about the burns, she tried to deflect. 𝐒𝐭 took her daughter's hand. "Honey, this is our chance to end all the abuse. They can and will do things not like that filth-ridden school. Please, baby, don't hold back." Through tears, Izumi gave details of the daily abuse she would suffer at school, how she had tried to go to the principal and counselor for help, and how her father had broken 𝐒𝐭's arm in the attempt. She had, by chance, encountered the heroine 𝗧𝗵𝗲, and she had disappeared. She looked to Midnight and Recovery Girl and began to beg and plead for them to save her. She just wanted a day without being beaten. Give her one day, and she could die happy. She just needed one day. 𝐒𝐿 broke hearing these words from her daughter, and soon they were both a crying mess. She was holding each other. Midnight fought back the tears, soon replacing them with furious anger and an almost divine fury. Recovery Girl was all fury. She stepped back and pulled out her phone. "Toshi, I don't care what you are doing. I don't care where you are. I am calling in some of all the debt you owe me. Get to Musutafu General and get here yesterday." Not waiting for a response, she hung up the phone. Not only has this disgusting excuse for a human being wormed his way into the top 30, but he has also broken his daughter to the point that if she lived one day without being beaten, she would die happy. To hope for simply one day, what has this monster done? If Nezu doesn't handle this, then I will work for sure, the pro-heroine thought. Recovery Girl then gently kissed Izumi on the head, and the girl drifted off to sleep as her body began to heal rapidly, looking to 𝐒𝐭. "Your turn now, dearie." 𝐒𝐭 just nodded and stepped behind the curtain to be examined. 𝐒𝐭 had just finished getting dressed when a knock at the door made her jump. Umpire was there and wanted to check on them. 𝐒𝐭 shook in fear, but Midnight touched her shoulder gently. "It's okay, 𝐒𝐭. I will handle this." Midnight stepped into the hall. "What are you doing here?" spat Umpire. "I am here to protect 𝐒𝐭 and Izumi Midoriya. We have already received their testimony and that of their neighbors. Interestingly, you and Speed Freak came up in all the testimonies we heard tonight." Midnight said as her hand rested on her whip handle. She saw Umpire's hand on his bat. "I don't know what you are talking about. Now get out of my way. I want to check on my friend's wife and daughter. They do not wish to be disturbed, so I suggest you leave. Little girl, you are playing with something you do not know. Now if you turn and walk away, I will let it slide. Now, the day I take threats from a 2-bit thug like you is the day I hang up the whip for good. You poor excuse for a pissant. Listen, bitch, either step aside, or the next thing you will be serving is my dick with your body. Maybe you don't get it, Umpire. I would rather see the whole race die before I let you anywhere near me. If you want to force this issue, I will show why I am in the top 20, and you can't even sniff 100. Umpire went to draw his bat when a knife was suddenly at his throat. Midnight's lips curling into a sneer. He felt another blade at his crotch. Now, if the next thing you do is not to leave here and not come back, you will be singing soprano for the rest of your miserable life. Now nod your head like a good bitch if you understand. Umpire nodded as sweat ran down his face. Now good bitch, begone. Umpire fled. Midnight put the hidden blades away once more and calmed herself. It wasn't a side of herself that she released unleashing, but it emerged every once in a while. It was evident that Umpire was involved with the commission, probably as a lackey to Fire Breath. He thought he was the big fish when he was just a tiny fish catching a ride. He only hoped that Eraserhead was having better luck. Eraserhead, now it's okay, Speed Freak, just write everything down, and I will make sure the judge knows how much help you were. Thank you, Eraserhead, Speed Freak managed between choked sobs. Here you go. Now start writing. The legend for years and even decades to come. Officers would pass on the tale of the interrogation of Speed Freak, handled by Eraserhead. The speedster arrived with the underground hero after they escorted Fire Breath to a private hero hospital to receive treatment for the bizarre attack at his home. How he got the speedster to come to a police station is the beginning of the legend. What was said or what was threatened is not known, but it is believed that Eraserhead convinced him to do so through a level of charisma hidden in a capture scarf's depth. What is not in dispute is that the speed freak was confused and incredibly upset upon walking into an interrogation room. He was ready to leave when Eraserhead walked in again, offered him a cold drink, and said that Speed Freak was crucial to getting to the bottom of the attack, and that without his testimony, Eraserhead was afraid the villain would walk free. When Eraserhead returned 30 minutes later, he placed a notepad and pen in front of the speedster, much to Speed Freak's confusion. Now this is where the legend kicks off. Eraserhead leaned down and whispered something, at most one or two, maybe short sentences. Speed Freak's eyes went wide. Then he started sobbing, writing, and willingly handing over his phone and password. When he exited, he handed the phone to a tech that raced off like the devil was chasing them. Detective 𝗧𝗵𝗲 stared at Eraserhead. "What did you say?" "A shot in the dark. I had some suspicions." The detective's truth quirk rang. Truth. Eraserhead walked away to get a cup of coffee. 45 minutes later, they had a full confession from Speed Freak before the Hero Commission knew where he was. The myth All Might had never moved as fast as he had after Recovery Girl's phone call. The retired pro-heroine was one of All Might's closest confidants. She had healed him after many major battles or training incidents while he was a student. She had been there to comfort him when his mentor had died. For most of the critical milestones or aftermaths, she was there. Now she had called him and was calling in a favor. Recovery Girl never did that. The tone of her voice left no room for questions, no room for argument. After a quick phone call to Sir Nightai and Torino about canceling their meeting, the pros protested till he told them the nature of the phone call. Their protests immediately stopped. All Might arrived approximately 1 hour after receiving the phone call. As he made his way into Musatafu General, no one dared to stop the one hero. As he made his way through the hospital, he did stop and offer reassuring words to a few children he saw along the way through. When he entered the hero wing, he immediately saw Midnight, who waved him over, opening a door behind her to admit him. All Might braced himself as he was unsure what kind of scene he was walking into. In the bed was a woman and her daughter. Both looked battered and bruised. They were wrapped in each other's arms, asleep. Recovery Girl was standing at the foot of the bed like a sentinel. She turned at his entrance, moved from her post, and pulled him into a corner. "What is so important that you called me here like this, Chiyo?" he whispered. "First, those two are the wife and daughter of Fire Breath. He almost murdered them tonight. He has abused them for years in ways that make my skin crawl. I called you because of the wife, 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 Midoriya. Her maiden name was 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲, after her adopted family. Before that, her name was 𝗵𝗃. She is Nana's daughter." All Might was stunned. Then he went to the medical report on Izumi. He had to restrain himself from snapping the chart in his hands. Chiyo filled in the information on 𝐒𝐭 and how their attempts to get help had been thwarted. The involvement of Umpire and Speed Freak. The apparent interference of the Hero Commission. The link to the disappearance of 𝗧𝗵𝗲. "Toshi, the commission is here. Umpire has been poking around. We are building a strong case against Fire Breath. I don't want them to fall back into his or anyone else's hands. Help them. They will be safe, no matter what I promise," he growled. Rooftop Lady Nagant sat looking through her scope into the hospital room. She had been sent to deal with 2 high-priority targets. She was told the targets were a mother and child currently in Mustafa General. Lady Nagant had fallen to the point of not asking questions, though it gnawed at her soul. She felt she was in too deep. Has she done too much? What if she was doing wrong? The little girl inside that dreamed of being a real hero, of doing good and making the world a better place, was screaming to be heard. No matter how much booze, sex, or other distractions, Lady Nagant couldn't keep her quiet for long. With a deep breath, she took her position, her quirk activating. She formed the bullet and loaded it into the chamber. The curtains were open, and she had a good view. As her eye lowered to scope, she prepared to do what had become so routine that it was making her sick. As the crosshairs locked on the target, she froze. 𝐒𝐭𝐽. That's 𝐒𝐭𝐽. The scope drifted to the bed and the sleeping child, green hair and freckles. That must be her daughter. Why would they want to shoot her and her daughter? What could they have possibly done? Look at them. Gaunt, battered, bruised, apparent signs of physical abuse, mental trauma. Who did this to you, 𝐒𝐽𝐽? Lady Nagant knew this target personally deeply. 𝐒𝐭𝐽 had been her senpai in school. Her senpai in the photography club and little Lady Nagant had the most profound crush on her senpai. 𝐒𝐽𝐽 senpai was excellent. She stood up to people, fought for what she believed in, was passionate about photography, and treated everyone with respect and dignity. 𝐒𝐽𝐽 senpai and Mitsuki senpai had taken her under their wings. She was their precious 𝐒𝐽𝐽, the dear underclassman. It was the first time she felt like she had fallen in love. She never told her senpai. She kept it all inside. She would tell herself that when she became a great hero, they would meet again and tell 𝐒𝐽𝐽 all that was bottled up inside, the torch she carried. She needed to know. She needed answers. Something crossed her field of vision. All Might. What is he doing here? I cannot do this. Not to her. No shot, sir. All Might is in the room. She radioed in. Clear the area. Hold for new orders. That was the only response. This wasn't how things were supposed to work. She was supposed to be doing good, being a damn hero. Someone that 𝐒𝐽𝐽 senpai could be proud of. Someone that she could be proud of. Sadly, she wasn't that person. She had lost her way. She was lost in the darkness. Was there any way out? I should just go put a bullet into the head of the damn commission. But that won't necessarily solve the problem. If I expose them somehow, it will cause such chaos that I will spend the rest of my life in a cell. It is the least I deserve. If you want out, come to dinner at the corner of 86th and 125 East. A voice rang over her headset. Who is this? Someone that knows what it is like to be in a cage. The line went dead. The man? Mammal? 𝐬𝐻𝑍 sat in the back of the limousine, setting down the radio. Vlad King stood outside waiting. 𝐬𝐻𝑍 turned his attention back to the person sitting there patiently. Thank you for your assistance, Lo-Fi. I can tell you the last thing I expected was a phone call from the principal of UI half expected to find the cops waiting for me. Why, you may be a vigilante and wanted in some questionable robberies. You and I both know that they were just fronts for illegal operations. Besides, I heard you hung it up and turned over a new paw. I did. Got a wife and a little girl to look after. Went legit. My baby is the most important thing to me now. Children have a way of putting life into perspective, don't they? That they do. So we have a deal. When my little girl submits to join your school, you will look the other way about her being my daughter. I am a mammal of my word, Lo-Fi. What's the little rascal's name? Lo-Fi lights up. May and that girl are going to change the world or possibly blow it up. 𝐬𝐻𝑍 smiled and exited the vehicle, ordering the driver to drop his guest wherever he needed to go. Climbing onto Vlad's shoulder. Let us go see the mother. The war is just about to begin. The bastard Hisashi awoke in a hospital room. His mind was fuzzy and sore. Slowly the memories put themselves in place. His daughter had manifested a quirk, but she had used it to fight him off when he was trying to kill them. Fuck. He knew he had drunk a lot that night. Then those damn twins had offered him something called Stardust. After that, it was very blurry. When he came home and saw them there, he just decided to kill them. I mean, he would do it anyway, so why not now? But that damn useless daughter of his had decided now, after all these years, This was the night to manifest. Had she done so sooner, she may have been worth something. As it was, she was so damn scrawny that he couldn't even really sell her. The problem was that now that his wife and daughter were alive, sure, the neighbors would have seen the fight, but he could spin it. His wife is having an affair, turns his daughter against him, and they try to kill him. Yeah, that was the ticket. The commission would sweep everything under the rug like always. Now to turn to the tears, play the sympathy ticket, get his hand back on his possessions, and after a short break, a sympathy boost in his rankings, and he would be on the rise again. He hit the nurse button, doing his best to pull tears from his eyes. Like clockwork, the door opened, and the nurse walked in, expressing surprise that he was awake, and immediately checking to see if he needed anything. "Nurse, where is my family? Are they okay?" "I will have to check on that for you, sir. They were taken to a different hospital. Please try to calm yourself. I will get the doctor for you immediately." She exited the room. The doctor came in soon after, informing him that his wife and daughter had been taken to 𝗵𝗃 General Hospital, that his daughter had not regained consciousness, and that his wife was by her bedside. He understood 𝗵𝗃𝗃 desire to be by his family's side, but it would be against medical advice as he still suffered from the lingering effects of the concussion. The doctor leaned in and whispered that he would expedite the paperwork to get him released and arrange transport. 𝗵𝗃𝗃 thanked the good doctor. He began processing his scheme when the door closed. He needed to get a hold of the commission soon, but he needed his phone. Where in the hell were Speed Freak and Umpire? Those damn toadies were never around when he needed them. No matter, he could manage this on his own. The mother 𝐒𝐭 awoke to the gentle nudging of Recovery Girl. Izumi was still sound asleep, and her daughter had a peaceful look on her face. 𝐒𝐭 had not seen anything like that in a long time. Slowly and expertly, she disentangled herself from her daughter. "There is someone here to see you. They will help you, dearie," Recovery Girl said with a gentle smile, pointing to the door. When 𝐒𝐭 opened it, she saw Midnight rise from her chair just outside and offer a gentle smile, pointing to a room across the hall. Midnight, she then sat back down to resume her watch. 𝐒𝐭 walked to the other room, unsure what to expect. Worst case, it was Hisashi or the commission. But she doubted that Midnight would go through all this trouble to turn her over now. What she saw as a rat/dog/bear thing in a suit sitting in a chair drinking tea beside him was some pro-hero she did not recognize. "Please come in, 𝐒𝐭. I am afraid I don't have much time. Normally I would love to offer some banter or wit, but must tell you I am the principal of 𝐒𝐻𝗔𝗄. And this is the pro-hero Vlad King. You're the person that Midnight called." "Yes, that is correct. Now I have some paperwork for you to fill out for the restraint order for you and your daughter against your husband. He has just regained consciousness and will be arriving here soon or attempting to. The commission is trying to move to cover everything up as we speak, but we have a signed confession by Speed Freak, a whole mountain of evidence against your dear husband provided not only by you and your daughter, but your neighbors as well. Why are you helping us? No offense, sir. Why do you care? The truth is that you and your situation will be the first shot I need to go against the Hero Commission. The Commission is protecting heroes that have no place to be free, let alone heroes. Your husband and his cronies are a prime example. The system has failed you, your family, and thousands of others and needs to be corrected before it all burns down. If this continues, it will only be a matter of time till the Commission has so much power that it controls every hero. We will find ourselves controlled by a totalitarian regime leading to civil war. Japan will crumble, and so will other countries, plunging the globe into a quirk war that will take centuries to recover from, if ever. How do I know that we will be safe? I want my daughter to be safe. The full might and resources of 𝐒𝐻 will be in your corner, as will several heroes that are loyal to me. I can protect you. You have just met me, but I ask for your trust. Midnight called me to keep you safe. Trust her judgment and me. 𝐒𝐭 needed help finding where to turn and nowhere to run. Izumi was in no condition to run. They needed money. Her only hope was to trust those willing to fight for her. We will be in your care, 𝐒𝐭 said. She saw no other way out. While Nezu's motives weren't pure, he had the only option she could reasonably agree to. The other option would see Izumi dead or worse. Excellent. Let us get those papers signed. What happens when the hero known for his smile is not smiling? Very few people on the planet have seen All Might without his trademark smile. The number of people could be counted on both hands, and not using all the fingers. That number increased by 1 this night. As All Might opened the door to Fire Breath's room, the number 1 hero's smile faded as soon as the door closed. Fire Breath was not expecting All Might to come to see him, or the look All Might had on his face. Any words that Fire Breath was about to say fled his mind. It was taking significant measures of self-control not to void his bowels. All Might handed him a folder. Slowly, Fire Breath opened it, seeing a restraining order barring him from contacting or coming within 300 yards of 𝐒𝐭 and Izumi. Finding his bravery or arrogance would depend on whom you asked. What is this? He asked, venom permeating his voice. That is a restraining order. I know you may not be familiar with them. Let me explain. After I am done, I am positive you will fully understand. Before Fire Breath could respond, All Might's hand was around his throat, and with ease, Fire Breath was lifted off the ground. We know everything. I know everything. You will not go near them again. Do you understand me? If I even hear you looking in the general direction, maybe the last thing you will hear is the wind as I remove your head from your body. Please feel free to tell anyone you want about what I said. No one will believe you. I am All Might, and you are a piece of trash. The Commission will not save you. There is no one you can hide behind, and there is nowhere you can run where I cannot find you. Many people owe me many favors. Fire Breath clawed futility at All Might's hand. Tell your handlers I am coming for them and the whole Commission. With that, All Might dropped him to the floor unceremoniously and headed to the door. As he opened it, his trademark smile returned. Glad to see that you are recovering, Fire Breath. Best of luck to you. The door softly closed, but it sounded like an iron door just closed to Fire Breath. The lady wearing a dark, nondescript hoodie to hide her trademark hair, Lady Nagant, walked into an empty dinner. The man behind the counter nodded and jerked his thumb around the corner. As she made her way over, she was not expecting the principal of the UA sitting there. She had recommended the building and the surrounding area. There were no pros in the area, and he sat alone. Walking over, she posed as the principal poured her a cup of tea. Time is precious, my lady, so I will not waste yours. I plan to take down the Hero Commission and want your help, he said. I know what you have done. I know that you are starting to see the Commission for what it is. What is it? Power-hungry, maniacal, oppressive, and vile. What does that make me? Someone who once believed in what a hero was meant to be. Someone that understood that sometimes somebody had to do the dirty work. Someone willing to do the dirty work so others could be clean. So, you want me to trade their targets for yours? If it comes to that, yes. I am willing to go as far as needed to stop the Hero Commission, and I believe you are too. You have lost your way. They took you and twisted your dreams and reality to suit their needs. I will not sit here and say I will never ask you to remove a target, but I will tell you why. I will not force you to take the shot or think less of you should you choose not to. Lady Nagant, I will burn the Hero Commission to the ground. It will be dirty and dangerous. If the Commission is not stopped, we will destroy our society and lead to an eventual worldwide war. Tell me why the Commission sent me after a mother and child tonight. Gladly, but we should order something to eat. I, for one, am famished. El Bastardo Fire Breath stepped out of the hospital into the crisp, early morning air. Glancing around, He saw the waiting vehicle and made his way over. The driver stepped out and held open the back door. Fire Breath stepped in and was face to face with the Undersecretary Hina Hiro, the eternally petite and youthful girl who sat waiting with a stiff drink in one hand and file in her lap. Hina Hiro was blessed cursed with one of the most dreamed about quirks healing factor. The problem is that no one ever considers what would happen if that ability awakened when you were 4. How many years would you have to live to even look like anything more than a prepubescent child? No one knew that answer except maybe Miss Hiro, but no one dared to ask her. Mrs. Hiro, I wasn't expecting you this evening. No, Mr. Midoriya, I wouldn't have been expecting me either. You have managed to light off a shitstorm in a single night that I wouldn't have thought possible in 100 years. The Commission has for years covered your indiscretions and blatant fuck-ups. For the simple reason that the Vice President, for some unknown reason, had decided that you were worth it. That situation is like the ocean ever-changing. Mrs. Undersecretary, I can assure you that I am worth the time the Commission has invested in me. That this little situation is nothing but a momentary hiccup. If the Commission would see fit to continue their investment, I am sure they will be happy with the results. Mr. Midoriya, let me be clear. We at the Commission are extremely disappointed with what has transpired tonight. Not only did you recklessly decide to come home and execute your family in one of the dumbest ways possible, but you also failed to do so and instead had a quirk battle with your daughter, which you lost. During the battle, you stated things that should have never been said out loud, and those comments were recorded and disseminated into the sphere. For all his stupidity, Umpire decided that threatening midnight outside your family's hospital room was a great decision, and your wife is refusing all contact with Commission officers. When a cleaner was dispatched to handle this situation, they informed us that Midnight, All Might, and Recovery Girl were involved. Would you care to elaborate on the conversation you and All Might had? Fire Breath started to sweat. It took a moment before he could relay his conversation. Mrs. Hiro finished her drink and put it into the cup holder. Ma'am, if you just let me talk to the Vice President I can explain everything to him. I am afraid that is not an option, Mr. Midoriya. He retired suddenly, she said. Hisashi suddenly was even more aware of his precarious position. You see, Mr. Midoriya, if it were up to me, you would retire as well. But that would raise far too many questions, especially with All Might seeing you all healthy and suck. Instead, you will be tied to the stake and burned alive. When everything breaks, and it will soon, you will stand there and do everything we tell you to as we attempt to salvage this. You do not speak to anyone without a representative next to you. You will not decide for yourself without a representative to sign off on it. What about those useless excuses for a wife and daughter? They are going to walk away for now. You are going to do exactly what All Might said, or we will hand you over to him if we feel that may placate him for a day or two. When the divorce papers arrive, you will sign them and give them everything as an act of contrition. We will see if you can be rehabilitated. If you can, you get to keep breathing. If you can't, you will join the Vice President in retirement. Are we clear, Mr. Midoriya? Yes, ma'am. Good. Now you are going to exit his vehicle, walk into the safe house, and await further instructions. Now get out of my car. Hisashi stepped out of the vehicle, unaware that it had been in motion during the conversation, his mind racing and slowly filling with anger and rage. It was all that damn girl's fault. He should be standing in front of cameras receiving sympathy and attention. But now the Commission was upset, threatening his position. He knew what he had to do. He had to prove to them that he could salvage the situation. He just had to make sure he killed them this time. Waking in pain and misery was nothing new for Izumi. She had been doing it for years. The familiar warmth of her mother wrapped around her was just as usual. The unfamiliar concerned her. Fatigue was not an adequate description. A less proper term would be dead tired. Her bones felt tired. The soreness and tenderness of her arm drew her attention more than anything else. As that sensation was assimilated, the sound of all the monitors in the room and the smell of sterilization began to fade in. Her mind is ever sharp, relayed that she was in the hospital. Captain Obvious would have been proud. The events from the night before, the attempted murder, her quirk. She had a quirk and had not only fought her father, but she had beat him back. She didn't know if she would beat him, but she had held him off long enough to be taken to the hospital. The memory of giving her statement to Midnight and Recovery Girl danced in her mind. Her mother telling her this was their chance. She desperately wanted to cling to that hope, but it had been ripped from her so many times. But Midnight had been there, and Recovery Girl, there was no way that her father could get to them, was there. Opening her eyes, she saw her mom, the hospital room, and everything she had expected and remembered from the night before. What she didn't expect to see sleeping in a chair near her bed was the #1 hero of Japan, or quite possibly the galaxy. All Might. Katsuki Bakugo. It was odd not seeing the damn Deku not show up to class. As he had taken his seat, he heard some whispers about fire breath being attacked in his home. That was that dumb bitch's old man. He wasn't the most extraordinary hero, but tough and didn't take shit from anyone. Katsuki always thought it was a cruel joke that he would have such a useless daughter. At least she stopped trying to slip him love letters, stupid Deku. In the third period, his name was called out over the intercom system, summoning him to the principal's office. Clicking his tongue in annoyance, he rose from his desk and stomped out of the room. A few snickers about him being called could be heard, but the damn extras knew better than to say something he could listen to. His interest was piqued when he entered the room, and he saw his parents in the room, along with what, at first glance, was some hobo. But if he was here, he had to be some pro, probably underground. Here he is, Mr. Eraserhead. As you can see, this young man will someday be a good pro. Is there anything else you need before we begin? The sniveling principal said. The pro looked at the sycophant. I am sorry, sir, but would you mind allowing us to use the office privately, as this is part of an active investigation? His parents must be present by law. The principal had a brief look of annoyance before the mask fell back into place, and he excused himself, telling them to take their time. When the door closed, the pro turned his attention to Katsuki, who still looked annoyed to be there. Sit down. I can stand, the boy responded with an irritated tone. That wasn't a request, Eraserhead responded with a tone that left no question that he would not tolerate any foolishness. Katsuki took his seat more to find out what the hell was going on. He was sure it had to do with fucking Deku, but why it involved him, he had no idea. Profoundly confident in his actions and superiority, he took a seat. Are we going to begin? His father, Matsuo, asked. As soon as he didn't even get to finish his statement when the door opened, and a police detective entered, carrying a manila folder that he handed to Eraserhead. Allow me to introduce myself. Detective Naomasa Tsukachi with the Musutafu Police Department. Before this goes any further, I must, by law, inform you that my quirk is a lie detector and is self-explanatory. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Bakugo, are you here of your own volition? Yes, they responded. Truth. Now, would someone please explain what is going on? Mizuki said in an exasperated tone. The lead detective settled against the desk, taking the lead in the questioning. Yes, Mrs. Bakugo. Do you know Inko Midoriya, formerly Inko Shishio? Truth. Were you aware that she has a daughter? Yes, but we fell out of touch when our kids were very young. Truth. So, you were unaware that her daughter attended this school and was in the same class as your son? I didn't know that. Truth. She looked at her son, wondering why he never said anything or even mentioned that. Katsuki Bakugo, at any time, had Izumi Midoriya given you letters or notes and asked you to pass them to your mother? No, lie. Would you care to rethink your answer? That stupid Deku gave me some stupid-ass love letters saying I should give to the hag. Truth. Did you ever read the letters? No. Why would I read a stupid love letter from that disgusting quirkless trash? Truth, Katsuki. His mother yelled, half rising out of her seat. What's she if nothing but a fucking Deku? Whom the hell cares? Truth, Katsuki Bakugo. Those were, in fact, not love letters, but they were cries for help. Izumi Midoriya was trying to get a message to your mother. In the past years, Inko and Izumi have been victims of extreme domestic abuse. Suddenly, a loud commotion could be heard as the shouts of police could be heard, and someone being tackled to the floor. Do not be alarmed. That is simply the police raiding the school, Eraserhead said as he continued reading the file's contents. Do you mind if I take over, Detective? No, sir. Go right ahead. Katsuki Bakugo. Have you ever used your quirk on Izumi Midoriya? The supreme confidence began to fade. No lie. The detective just raised an eyebrow. Yes, but I had to put that dumb whore in her place. Truth. Were your parents aware of your actions? No. Truth. Were any of the school faculty aware of your actions? They understood she needed to be put down. It wasn't just me. Many people did it. It would have been better if she had just jumped off a bridge. Truth, his parents gasped, and even the detective was surprised. Eraserhead leaned forward. In my hand, I have a medical report showing Izumi Midoriya had detectable and noticeable traces of nitroglycerin in her bloodstream and burn marks constant with being exposed to close-range explosions. Not only that are signs of multiple concussions and pulmonary barotrauma or blast lung. Not to mention a nice handprint on her back containing foreign DNA. Katsuki Bakugo, you are under arrest. No, his parents said, rising to their feet. You can't arrest me. I'm going to be the next #1 hero. That worthless bitch will never be anything but a useless Deku. She doesn't even have a quirk, for Christ's sake. When I am done with you, you will be lucky to be able to use your quirk to light a campfire. Eraserhead said. The detective stepped forward and restrained the boy, securing the quirk suppressant cuffs. Katsuki Bakugo, you are under arrest for assault and unlawful use of a quirk. Mr. and Mrs. Bakugo, you are welcome to follow, as he will not be transported to Musutafu Child Detention Center. Katsuki was dragged out of the principal's office screaming and raving like a madman, demanding that he be released as the next great hero, that Izumi had gotten whatever she had deserved, that he was superior, and that this was a great mistake. His parents watched in horror the monster they had raised and let run rampant. Mitsuki was breaking down. Her son had taken after her so much, and she had paid no heed to his demeanor and behavior, stepping in to defend him and his attitude from her husband. She had failed Katsuki. She would have to do everything in her power to try and save him, even if she had to keep him from himself. An extraordinary hospital room, All Might. The sudden outburst startled Inko, and the #1 hero woke up. Inko then saw All Might next to the bed, and she shouted, All Might. Soon both girls were struggling to get up and make themselves presentable. The hero was flustered momentarily before he could get them calmed down. Inko was now standing beside the bed, while Izumi was sitting up. I apologize for startling you ladies. Recovery Girl and Midnight have returned home to get some sleep after the long night. I volunteered to watch over you till they returned, and I am ashamed to say I fell asleep myself. There is no reason to apologize, sir. I can only thank you for taking the time to watch over Izumi and me. I know you have much more important things to do, Inko said, bowing several times. I am sorry that you had to waste your time on someone like me, sir, Izumi said weakly. Nonsense. Both of you raise your heads. It is not my place to speak. But I want to tell you that I will do everything in my power to keep that man away from the both of you. The girls were in stunned silence. Hope had been dancing in their minds, afraid to come to light, as if doing so would cause it to fade away. Yet, Now here was the number one hero telling them he was on their side and would do everything to protect them. It was too much, and soon the tears exploded from the two. All Might tried his best to placate and calm them, but the raw emotion for the mother and daughter was too much. Just knowing that it was now a real possibility that the nightmare might be coming to an end was too much. When mother and daughter finally composed themselves, 𝐒𝐭 finally asked the question. All Might not say that we aren't grateful you are here, but I have to ask why you are going this far for us. All Might paused. Do you know your birth mother? I have some memories of her, but not a lot. She gave me and my brother up for adoption when I was very young, and my brother was but an infant. What does she have to do with this? Your mother was Nana Shimura, the hero 𝐒𝐻𝐽. She is the one that trained me before her death. I was young and unable to save her. I never knew what had happened to her children, knowing that you and Izumi have suffered in such a fashion. He took a deep breath. I feel like I have failed her all over again. I know that not knowing gives me an excuse, but I consider it an excuse. I ask that you allow this fool to do all he can to help to alleviate his conscience. 𝐭 was lost for words. Her mother had trained the All Might, and now the number one hero was asked to protect her and her daughter. 𝐭 was an unselfish woman. She never wanted a lot, she never asked for much, and the thought of being this selfish tore at her core. But Izumi, she was in 𝐭's world. Her daughter had suffered, and she wanted to see her bloom and grow. See her dare to dream for something more than a day without violence. See her have an absolute dream and be able to achieve it, whatever it may be. We are in your hands, All Might, 𝐭 said, lowering her head to the number one hero. Yagi Toshinori, he responded as the two girls looked at him, slightly confused. That is my name. Please call Yagi or Toshi if that is too much. The trio sat in silence for a moment. Mr. Toshi? Izumi asked softly. Yes, young Izumi. What happens now? When Miss Midnight and Recovery Girl return, we can discuss your options. The first thing will be to find a safe place to live and replace your possessions. I did tear up the house, didn't I? Izumi said with a hint of sadness. You did so to save yourself and your mother. Recovery crews are already hard at work, and I promise I will make sure any sentimental items are recovered and returned to you. I don't know how we will find a place to live. We have very little money. He made sure of that, 𝐭 said. Then I will provide you with all the money you need. He could see 𝐭 immediately going to protest. Please, 𝐭, years of being a hero have made me quite wealthy, and I have nothing or anyone to spend it on. Allow me to use some of it for you and Izumi. With that, they waited, making small talk which didn't last long when Midnight and Recovery Girl returned. The two heroes stepped off to the side as Recovery Girl went into doctor mode, examining her patients. The both of you are extremely malnourished, but I congratulate you, 𝐭. You managed to keep Izumi from any lasting harm. I think we can get her on track with a proper diet. We need to ensure that she is eating right and getting some exercise to help rebuild her. Eating properly and resting safely will do both of you wonders. Speaking of which, Midnight said, after speaking with All Might, I was wondering if you two would like to come to live with me? 𝐭 and Izumi just blinked. Fire breath has already been released, but rest assured he will not be allowed anywhere near you. The restraining orders have been granted, and I delivered them to him personally, Toshi said. My place is safe and unlisted. This way, I can help keep you two safe like I promised. Midnight added, I can always give you your place if you would like, but I won't be there as much to watch over you. Midnight can solve that issue, and I have offered to help with any financial needs. Also, I am sure it will give you peace of mind that she is there looking out for you both. And it would also help me. I could use someone to help me at home. Being a pro and a teacher, I hate to admit that having someone to make sure I eat right alone would be worth its weight in gold. I figure I could pay you to be my housekeeper, and that will give you time to adjust and maybe go back to school to finish your degree or whatever you choose to do. We could help each other out." 𝐭𝐽𝐻 looked at Izumi, who nodded. Midnight had been the first to take a chance on them and had set all this into motion. She made Izumi feel safe. "We will be in your care, 𝗵𝗵𝗲," 𝗭𝐽𝐻 said. A new beginning. Midnight. All Might and President Mike escorted 𝗭𝐽𝐻 and Izumi out of the hospital through a private exit. They were then taken to their new home in a private SUV through a parking garage. 𝗭𝐽𝐻 and Izumi were nervous throughout the ride, anticipating a possible trap or unexpected event. Upon arriving at the spacious penthouse apartment, Izumi frantically searched for him, but he wasn't there. She returned to the living room and nearly broke down in tears while telling her mother he was nowhere to be found. The two held each other. Having dared to dream, they feared it would be taken away. They knew mentally that there was no way for All Might or Midnight to betray them, but the fear was deep. All the years of punishment and abuse they had left deep scars on them. During the night, All Might slept on the couch while the mother and daughter shared a bed. 𝗵𝗵𝗲 stayed up late discussing plans and actions for the future with a number one hero. All Might had to depart the next day, but he wished to accompany the group for shopping to purchase clothes and essentials before leaving. A vital operation was on the horizon, and he wanted to ensure they were in a good position beforehand. The family woke in the morning, expecting the nightmare to start again when it didn't. Slight trepidation walked alongside their hope. Going out in public was difficult. They were nervous and fidgety, Izumi more so than 𝗭𝐽𝐻. Their heads constantly looked for danger, especially as they were outside their regular approved routes and going to places they had been forbidden. They only managed to handle an hour or two before it overwhelmed them, forcing them to return to their new home. All Might quietly seethed with anger. He understood how long of a journey they would have, but bearing witness angered and hurt the number one hero. He couldn't punch this into oblivion. The psychological trauma would take time. While his date with Destiny was on the horizon, he would do everything he could to ensure their future would be bright and a place where they could dream in peace. Katsuki Bakugo. Having spent the night in a juvenile detention center, or the JDC was spent not in reflection, or with life-changing epiphanies, but in anger and rage. He had done nothing wrong. It was all that damn 𝗵𝗃𝗄's fault. Now his perfect story and perfect ascension were marred by this incident. Here he was, the next great hero dealing with pathetic lowlifes and future villains. Being forced to breathe the same air as these rejects was almost enough to make him sick. He had just finished telling some leave what he thought of him, when a group of older boys cornered him. Katsuki readied to blow these damn extras back to whatever hole they had crawled out of. But the quirk-suppressing bracelets quickly reminded him that he was quirkless. The bracelets did wonders on emitter types, but could do very little on mutant types, as Katsuki found out. He had always fancied himself a fighter, but he had never been in a fight. It was always one-sided beatdowns, ones facilitated by his extraordinary quirk. Now he was without his quirk, and the 10-year-old would learn a painful lesson. It lasted for 10 minutes before they came and broke it up. He tried to fight, but was quickly overwhelmed. In the end, he was on the floor in a ball, covering his head, wondering where someone was to end the attack. This wasn't a one-off occurrence. On the third night, when it happened again and again, no one came till the guards noticed, lacking any real effort, making their way over to stop the attack with a light verbal reprimand. He sat there wondering why no one interfered, why the others just walked away. "You are wondering why no one jumped in?" A small voice with a noticeable lisp rang out. Katsuki turned and saw a tiny boy with purple orbs for hair. He was holding out a damp cloth so Katsuki could clean himself up. Not waiting for a reply, the boy continued. "I bet you were the top dog in your school and ran everything. You could beat on whomever you wanted and do anything your heart desired. It might make right. No one dared to stand up to you, and those that did wouldn't do it a second time after you taught them a lesson, am I right?" Katsuki nodded. "Here you are, dog shit. No one knows you or cares. You have no quirk here, no power. Nothing that makes you special. You might as well be quirkless. It sucks when the world decides you are on the bottom, and you can do nothing about it. I can get stronger and show everyone who they are messing with. Katsuki snarled. And then you will go too far and end up back here, or worse. You do you. Maybe if you get out of here, remember how you felt, and that someone weaker than you in every way possible offered you some kindness. What's your name? Minoru Mineta, the boy said as he walked off. Flame breath as ordered. He sat in the safe house. The guards watching him didn't interact or offer conversation. On the second day, the news story broke an exclusive video of the hero attacking and fighting his daughter. His stock plummeted. He was thankful they had confiscated his phone, as he was sure it was blowing up. Umpire spoke up in his defense, talking of how Flame Breath was a great hero and father, constantly working to give his family everything. Nothing from Speed Freak. He had just disappeared. The following day he was presented with a statement that made him just puke. There are no defensive claims of mind control, how his daughter attacked him, or even the infidelity attempted murder. He was defending himself. When he brought it up to the commission agent, the agent turned on the television and turned up the audio with his voice ringing loud and clear. Luckily for him, the agent had multiple copies of the prepared statement, as many were burned that day. Inko and Izumi Nimiri notified them before the news story broke, and Flame Breath was about to release a statement. They prepared as best they could, but needed to prepare for what happened. They watched as he stepped on the stage, dressed in his hero costume, a very recognizable stern look on his face. He stepped to the podium as the light bulbs flashed. I would like to thank you for coming today as I address the allegations that had been made against me. They are all true. I have been an abusive father and husband to two people who did nothing to deserve it. I will step away and seek the help I need to ensure that I can become a better person. For those who had put their faith and trust in me, I can only offer my most sincere apologies and beg for your forgiveness and understanding. To my wife and daughter, I offer no platitudes for what you endured due to my actions. I will ask no forgiveness from you and expect none. I ask that you in the media please allow them the time and space needed to heal. I will surrender to authorities to accept and bear any punishment our great legal system lay before me. Thank you. He stepped back and bowed deeply as Endeavor stepped onto the stage and placed his former sidekick in cuffs, placing him under arrest and leading him off the stage. Inko and Izumi hugged and cried. They could do nothing. The nightmare was over. They were free. What now? Izumi asked Nimiri. It is time for you two to heal, the pro-heroine said. The scars will never be gone, and they will never be forgotten. But things will get better in time, I promise. It is safe to dream again. Katsuki Bakugo, he stood outside the JDC with his parents. They had posted bail for their son. On the trip home he looked at the news reports, how Flame Breath had admitted to everything. The entire car ride was silent. He remembered all the pain and suffering he had already inflicted on Deku, and how he had a chance to be a hero and failed. Now his future was up to the courts. His dream of being a hero was dangling by a thread. Izumi Shimura, it had been 6 months since that terrible but wonderful night. The divorce papers had been fast-tracked, but a stellar legal team and her mother's demands had been met without contention. She no longer had to bear that monster's name. She was now Izumi Shimura, the granddaughter of a great hero. A healthy diet and a safe place to sleep had done wonders for the little family. Nimiri was a gentle and reassuring presence in their life, giving space and gentle nudges. They had clothes, things they had chosen on their own. Nimiri had taken them to get their hair cut, bought them skincare products, and did all she could to bring them back to life. Therapy had started at first with sessions in the condo before the girls were comfortable enough to leave the house and attend sessions at the doctor's office. Recovery Girl continued managing their medical recovery. All Might would check in to reassure him. As Izumi sat with All Might one evening, she looked at the pro. All Might? She asked, fidgeting with her hands. Yes, young Izumi. Can I be a hero? Do you want to be? I think I do. I had always wanted to be before my quirk came in. I wanted to be a real hero, not like the monster that he was. But then I was trying to survive. But now, I think you can be a great hero with or without your quirk, young Izumi. You have the heart of a hero, and if that is what you desire, I swear I will do all I can to help you become a magnificent hero. Then please train me, All Might. I want to be a hero. Safety plus peace plus love plus time equals sign. A whole new life. Healing is a journey with bumps and pitfalls, and is often never a straight line as much as we desire it to be. Not quite as much as we want it to be quick. It is a constant process of moving forward through slow, occasional steps back, but nevertheless a continual journey ahead. It has to be like time, unrelentless, undetermined, and unstoppable. Izumi was like time, undaunted by the pitfalls, bumps, or backsteps. She would not let it stop her. She had glimpsed the promise of tomorrow, its taunting rays of light and hope, and pierced her dark world, which was glorious. She would not live in the dark anymore. She was constantly moving for that sweet promise of tomorrow. You live for today. You remember yesterday, but you never forget that precious promise of tomorrow. 𝐒𝐭 and Midnight were concerned when one morning they found the young girl in the exercise room with All Might, sweat dripping off her as the mountain of the man shouted encouragement and motivation to keep pushing forward. They wanted to jump in and chastise the man, but Izumi was responding. It was when he shouted at her. What do you want to be? A hero. Can a hero stop moving just because they are tired? A hero never stops. They always move forward. Now keep going, young Izumi. Push forward. Go beyond, plus, ultra. At dinner, they addressed it. 𝗏𝗏 and 𝗵𝗵𝗏 sat and asked the girl, eating a healthy portion of baked chicken. Izumi, honey, do you want to be a hero? 𝗏𝗏 asked. I do, Mama, the girl responded. Why, baby? There need to be more heroes like Midnight and her friends, people who were willing and able to help people like us. We can't be the only ones who suffer like us, if not worse. I want them to know that a hero will help them and listen, even if they think no one will. 𝗏𝗏 wanted to tell her daughter no, to keep her close and safe, away from that terrible world. But this was the first thing Izumi had been passionate about in such a long time. Her shields were strong, and they would only get more vital with luck. Then be the best hero you can be, Izumi. I will support you 1,000,000%. Me too, Izumi. When you are comfortable, I will even ask Eraserhead and President Mike to help out when they can. Thank you. Izumi managed to wipe away a few tears as she focused on her meal, her mind drifting back to the 2 notebooks on her desk. The American Dream Training Program Vol. 1-inch and Heroic Analysis for the Future Vol. 10. Fear plus self-loathing plus time equals sign. A kick to the head. Katsuki Bakugo sat in the courtroom as the charges had been read. The prosecution had presented its case, and the defense had done its best. It was evident from the initial interview, eyewitness testimony, video footage, and even the defendant's testimony that Katsuki Bakugo was fucked. He knew what he was doing was wrong in some fashion, even as he did it. But he was a child, 10 years old, and for 6 years, he had been allowed to run rampant without a leash or any measures in place to ensure some system was in place to prevent him from becoming what he had become. The judge looked at the boy standing before her with his parents by his side. Katsuki Bakugo, you have been failed by the system and very institutions that were there to help correct and report your abusive behavior. Your parents failed to notice your antics or crimes and failed you. After reviewing all the facts in this case, I was ready to enact the maximum punishment. Not only for you, but for your parents, as your actions and their inactions have led to you being here before me on this day. Do you know what the maximum sentence is? No, ma'am. My lawyer did tell me that I could be up to 20 years in prison. The boy responded. That is close to correct. I was ready to do just that. Mr. Bakugo, along with the requirement of quirk suppressing cuffs for the rest of your life. Till a young girl came to see me. Katsuki's eyes widened as his head tilted down and shot up, looking directly at the judge. This girl, obviously scared and shaking, came to me and asked that I give you a chance. Do you know who that girl was? Izumi, he answered in a whisper. Correct, the judge said, leaning forward. The victim of your crimes came to me and asked that you not be sent to prison, but be allowed a chance to prove yourself worthy of the title hero. At first, I was flabbergasted that this must be a result of her traumatic abuse, a case of Stockholm Syndrome, and that she would come and ask such a thing. I made her explain herself, and she said the system had failed you just as much as it had failed her, that while you may have been part of the failing, you could still make a difference. If she had insisted you walk free, I would have dismissed her entirely, but she wants you to be punished, not obliterate your life. Katsuki Bakugo, you have been found guilty on all charges and are sentenced to 15 years probation as a result. An order of protection has been established for yearly review by this court between you and Izumi Midoriya, with an annual review for renewal. A distance of 1,000 yards is to be maintained at all times, and all forms of communication are strictly forbidden. You are to attend mandatory psychiatric counseling in a lockdown facility for the period of no less than 1 year, at which point you will, upon release, participate in court-ordered counseling per the recommendation of your case manager. You are to wear quirk-suppressing cuffs at all times when you are not inside your home. You will serve 10K hours of community service. You will follow the law at all times. Should you have any infraction, you will immediately be taken into custody and serve your sentence of 15 years plus any additional time for the inciting offense. This shall be done consecutively without the possibility of parole or early release, with no time considered for time spent on probation before the incident. Should you desire to enroll in a hero course for university, this policy will stay in effect with a faculty member appointed by the court to be in charge of your quirk-suppressing cuffs. You are not to leave the country without the express written approval of this court. Masaru and Mitsuki Bakugo, you are fined and ordered to pay a fine of 36 million yen, which will be held in trust for the victim. 500 hours of community service. You must attend and pass mandatory parenting classes and court-ordered counseling as a couple and a family. The terms of your payments may be structured if you cannot pay them now. Your negligence is as much to blame as those sorry excuses of former educators down the hall. Your saving grace is that there is no evidence you witnessed any of your son's crimes, but as his parents, you are responsible. Before you leave my courtroom, Katsuki Bakugo, let me make something clear to you. You walk out of here today and not jail because Izumi Midoriya came to my chambers and pleaded that you were someone worth saving, that you were someone worth a second chance. You would go to jail if it weren't for her impassioned plea. All it takes is a simple act of kindness to change someone's world, or an act of forgiveness to give someone a second chance. There will not be another chance, young man. The court is adjourned. Please see the clerk outside for all your paperwork before you leave the building. With a clang of the gavel, it was over. He wasn't going to prison. Izumi had come and begged him to have a second chance. He wasn't worthy of a second chance. He was the real Deku. He could have been a real hero if only, for 1 second, he had listened and passed a note on to his parents. His parents let him out to be fitted for his QSCS and to file all the paperwork needed to allow them to go home for a little bit. The worst part was that he couldn't even tell her he was sorry for being a piece of trash. Truthfully, he knew he wasn't worthy of doing so. He was only home for a short time before he was assigned his mandatory treatment facility. His parents drove him up to the place. It was high in the mountains. Unfortunately, they could only take him to the gate, where he would be escorted in. They promised to visit often, but he turned and said, "Please don't. I need to figure out what is wrong with me. I will let you know when I am ready to see you." "Can we call you at least?" his mother asked. "Yay, I would like that. Mom, Dad, I am sorry for failing you. I promise I won't mess this up." I will prove to you and Izumi that I deserve this second chance." He bowed to his parents, fighting back his first tears in a long time. "I know you will, brat." "I know," Mitsuki said, hugging her son tightly. Katsuki stiffened before returning the hug. "Don't call me a brat, you hag," he replied softly. When they broke apart, Masaru stepped forward and hugged his son. "Become the man I always knew you could be," was all he said. "I will, Dad, I swear," he said. He watched as his parents stood there with their arms around each other as he turned to the waiting guards, handing over his duffel bag with items approved for him to bring. Katsuki Bakugo reporting. Solitude plus anger plus stupidity plus time equals self-destruction. Hector Berlioz once quipped. Time is a great teacher, but unfortunately, it kills all its pupils. A French romantic composer, his words would far outlast most of his work, but his words, like time, were everlasting. Except, of course, for Symphonie Fantastique, some things are timeless. A piece of music that tells the story of an artist's self-destructive passion for a beautiful woman, or a disgraced hero's obsession with two women that stood up and said no. For 9 long months, Fire Breath had sat in his safe house. Only a few representatives from the commission were present, and his movement, habits, and online access were all monitored and restricted. The only accurate contact was when Miss Hiro walked in, dropped his divorce papers in front of him, and forced him to sign. The press conference had done its job of making him look like a terrible person. Some corners were offering sympathy, while others were calling for his head. A simple 2-hour stay in a holding cell was all he had to do to be released on bail till his trial. He was at first angry about the trial, but when he began to meet with lawyers, it at least provided him with some interaction that he had been starved of. He was about to get some other interaction from a young nubile paralegal who just needed some convincing when Miss Hiro interrupted, and the girl was whisked away, a longing in her eyes that Hisashi recognized, a longing that only he saw. Anger turned to rage as not only was there to be testimony from those vile bitches, his ex-wife and daughter. Others had started coming forward. Ridiculous claims of coercion, blackmail, sexual assault, and rape. Women he had taken to the gates of heaven were now coming out and spreading these misnomers and outright lies. They had come to him, begging to be pleasured, begging to know the feel of a real man. Now they were part of the greater conspiracy to try and destroy him. It didn't matter. He would set it all straight and come out the following number 1 by the end of everything. It all started when he could slip a note to Umpire. The plan would be simple. Some villains attacked the courthouse when his ex and Izumi were in court. They happened to die in the attack. He uses his fantastic quirk to fight them off. They die as he is so overcome with grief that he can't regulate his quirk correctly. Bam! Instant reputation salvation. Day 1 of the trials was, of course, a media circus. He did manage to slip a soundbite out, though they told him to say nothing. As reporters were screaming for a comment, he gave them one. "I love my wife and daughter. I only hope to find redemption in their eyes, not for me or anyone else." They chastised him, but he saw the smiles on some of the ladies of the legal team. Yay, it was working. He wasn't surprised at all the attention he was getting. After all, he was the man, Fire Breath, fast rising hot hero, in every way. Oh yay. He looked around the galley and noticed that neither 𝐒𝐭 nor Izumi were present. He was ready, no plea deal. He was going to declare his innocence and show everyone how it was done. Now he just needed to ensure that 𝐒𝐭 and Izumi made it inside to die from the villain attack Umpire had arranged. Gross stupidity plus overconfidence plus did I mention stupidity equals Umpire. He understood what Fire Breath had told him. Make sure 𝐒𝐭 and Izumi don't make it to trial. Umpire needed to do this for his friend. He had to make sure he walked free so things could return to how they used to be: drugs, girls, and booze. He knew 𝐒𝐭 was in love with him, but they had to maintain appearances. The way 𝐒𝐭 would shed joy during coitus was all the proof he needed. He hadn't been able to get off without it, but bros before hoes. He had to do it. He hadn't been able to find them before the trial, but he knew they would be at the trial. When he saw the car pull up and the familiar heads of green hair emerge, he was momentarily stunned. They looked so different. 𝐒𝐭𝐚𝐲 seemed particularly impressive. He moved closer with his perfect disguise of the dark blue hoodie, sunglasses, mask, and bat painted black cleverly hidden. 2 good swings, and it would be all over. Before he could move, he felt an arm around his waist and was yanked into the air and deposited harshly on a rooftop. Before him was a lurking monster of a man known for his smile. But he was not smiling. Behind him was a murderous hobo that never smiled. These 2 men did not get along. They both viewed and approached heroics on completely different fundamental levels. One enjoyed Coke, the other action movies to period drama. The true divide was that one felt that dogs were the ideal pet, while the other championed the devil's favorite cats. They could agree on a few things. 𝗵𝐭 and Izumi were to be protected at all costs, and fire breath wouldn't be drawing breath much longer. 𝗵𝐭 and Izumi. They entered the courtroom, taking a position in the back row with Nomiuri there as support, along with President Mike for protection. They were there to witness the guilty plea and the punishment phase. A plea deal had been made and accepted. He would get to make a statement, then 𝗵𝐭 and Izumi would also have a chance to create one. It had been a worry that upon seeing him, fear would overcome them, and for a split second, it did. But then the fear was replaced by anger and pain. Their therapist had told them that the odds were that there would never be proper closure between them, as it was doubtful that Hisashi could ever be shown that his actions were wrong. He was sure that he had acted in the right way and was right. When he looked over his shoulder and saw them, he did his best to intimidate them with a mere glance. 𝗵𝐭 almost threw up at the revulsion that she had performed intimate acts with him. And Izumi saw nothing of the man she had wanted so desperately to make happy and earn praise from, but instead a sad and pathetic person. He was shocked at how they looked at him, quickly returning to the proceedings. Any second now, he thought, any second now. He had a perfect view of the outside. Then his blood ran cold. There was umpire beaten, and in custody standing between All Might and Eraserhead. He saw the number 1 slash across his throat as they moved out of view with umpire. He was stunned into silence. He didn't even notice that his plea deal had been accepted, and it was his turn to make a statement. Words couldn't form in his mind as he stood before the mic. He stumbled back to his seat. Izumi leaned over to her mother. Both were holding their statements. "Mom, let's just go," she whispered. "Are you sure, honey? Us telling him anything won't matter. He won't listen to it anyway. It is just a waste of time. I said I wanted to come and do this, but now I would rather get some ice cream with you and Nomiuri. He isn't worth our time or our thoughts anymore." 𝗵𝐭 looked at Izumi and glanced at Hitoshi. He looked like he had just seen a Shinigami. He looked pathetic. That was just how 𝗵𝐭 wanted to remember him. "Okay, baby, let us go." She turned to Nomiuri. "We would like to leave and get some ice cream, if that is okay." Nomiuri looked at them with surprise. She turned to see the judge looking at her. She waved the judge off and led the girls out of the room to a parking garage so they could leave. President Mike said nothing, but instead told them of this great little ice cream stand that overlooked the ocean, run by this little old couple and their daughter. "Can we go there?" Izumi asked. "Of course, Izumi," Nomiuri responded. She didn't say anything else as she knew that Hisashi was already taking them there anyways. A great hero always keeps their promises. Hisashi was regaining his senses as he was escorted into an empty courtyard with high walls, concrete flooring, with various drainage holes. He looked around with no cameras, no surveillance, only the metal door he had just been brought through. His mind was trying to put facts together. The prison transport troops had no markings on their uniforms, full faceplates concealing their identities. Not a word had been said after he was walked out of the courthouse and secured in the transport truck. "Wait a minute. I am not supposed to go to jail. That isn't part of the plea deal. I was supposed to return to the safe house." Panic began to grip the man. He remembered seeing Umpire being taken into custody outside the courtroom window, and standing next to Umpire was All Might. If I even hear you looking in their general direction, maybe the last thing you will hear is the wind as I remove your head from your body. The wind rustled. The cleaning crew 𝐒𝐽𝐫 and 𝐒𝐽𝐲 sat in the waiting area in their cleanup suites when the light above the door turned from red to green. They entered the stone courtyard and saw the body lying near the center. A quick look saw what they assumed to be the missing head or the splatter impact on the wall. 𝐒𝐽𝐫 hauled the massive blue barrel towards the body as 𝐒𝐻𝐲 sighed and pulled out the pressure washer heading towards the wall. At least it was rather clean this time. We should be done in less than an hour, 𝐒𝐽𝐫 called to his partner. Yay, so I am thinking of pizza tonight for dinner, 𝐒𝐻𝐲 replied. I could go for a pie. A year after that, Hitoshi went missing before Izumi felt ready to re-enter school properly. It had been almost 2 years since that fateful July night that her whole life had changed. The celebration of her 12th birthday was the second best birthday she had ever had, the best being her 11th, the first actual birthday she ever had. It was nice. Aizawa and Hisashi came over along with Toshi. She couldn't help but cry tears of joy as they sang happy birthday, and when they gave her natural gifts, not something her father would throw at her in the night. 𝐭𝐽𝐻𝐽 was overcome watching the changes. They both had changed and gotten healthy, at least physically. Mentally was still a daily exercise, and their therapist was happy with the progress they made. The first steps to fundamental outside excursions that were not wrapped in fear and anxiety were milestones. One would have assumed that a great prize was won when Izumi went down to the lobby on her own to retrieve the mail and talk to the receptionist and someone in the elevator on the way back up. Today, though, when the candles were blown out, Izumi said, "I want to go back to real school." There were questions and concerns, but seeing how determined she was to take back another part of her life, her support network could only do that support. It was determined that she would attend an all-girls academy as men still understandably made her uncomfortable. The only exceptions were Toshi, Aizawa, and Hisashi, who had been slowly integrated into her life and felt safe around them. But due to her experience in Aldera, others made her nervous. Nimiri was looking into something they could comfortably afford, but Toshi was having none of that, and instead had lined up for an interview with the prestigious all-girls academy, Megami Takai Educational Academy. He didn't bother to mention that the interview was a formality, and that Izumi's spot was already secured. Being the number one had its benefits. Plus, when you factor in that Izumi was rather intelligent, and when allowed to study without harassment had scored in the top 1% of all her testing. It wasn't a hard pitch for the number one. The school offered discretion and privacy, as it catered to some of the top families in the country, not to mention its stellar curriculum, which would guarantee Izumi a spot in any field she chose to pursue, including heroics. They had a few former pro heroines on staff to teach heroic and quirk theories. When Izumi exploded with joy at being accepted, the pro just kept quiet, not wanting to take away from the young girl's sense of accomplishment. To his surprise, in private, 𝗵𝐽𝐻 hugged him and thanked him for pulling whatever strings he did. When he began to protest, she told him that she could tell from the nature of the interview that Izumi would be admitted. With Izumi returning to school, 𝗵𝐽𝐻 decided to do the same, wanting to finish her nursing degree and see about being a surgical assistant. Her quirk would be helpful in the field and perfect with some training. It was Aizawa that she turned. He was surprised, but did not refuse her request to train her quirk. When they were alone, he was surprised when she told him to teach her how to fight. She would not let herself or her daughter be a victim again. When he was soft, she chastised him. When he went hard, she thanked him. Her spirit was being reforged, and she would not tolerate anything other than complete rebirth. Izumi was ready, or about as prepared as she could be. She was nervous, integrating into a new school, one where she wouldn't know anyone was going to be, for lack of a better word, scary. But it was a type of difficulty that she wanted to tackle. All the time in therapy and training had helped to rebuild a small fraction of her self-confidence. Her quirk was a prominent backbone of it. She had focused on learning to strengthen her shielding, not only to keep herself safe, but to keep anyone she was trying to protect safe. All Might had figured that piece out when the object was to hold a shield to keep him from laying a finger on 𝗵𝗲 during training. In Izumi's mind, she knew that 𝗵𝗲 could protect herself, but the knowledge that someone was behind her, depending on her, allowed her to push to higher levels. It was almost like that night. Her shields kept that asshole from hurting her mother. Taping into that feeling and holding it had become the breakthrough she needed. She was slightly worried about her mentor, though he was on a secret mission and wouldn't tell them anything about it. The years had been good for Izumi, once again a healthy weight, and thanks to the guidance of Recovery Girl, her suppressed development had started to catch up. Though that came with the caveat of training bras, which Izumi was not a fan of. Thankfully, there wasn't much there to train, but if her mother were any indication, that wouldn't be the case for long. She didn't want anything like that to draw attention to herself, her fear and apprehension around men being the main factor. The morning she woke to bloodied sheets was not one that would soon be forgotten in the household from the shattering scream that woke everyone. Part of her wanted it never to happen, a naive hope, but one she had held onto for a bit. But that crimson awakening was just another sign to herself that she was getting better, average, not a freak, or somehow deficient in some way. In the end, it was a complicated relationship with womanhood. At least her new school uniform looked cute. Black with pink accents. Izumi had opted for the knee-length skid option, though there was a shorter one hiding in her closet that she couldn't bring herself to wear yet. She stood in front of the grounds, staring at the beauty of the tree-lined walkway, the way the other girls walked with what she perceived to be exquisite taste. She looked as the guards at the gate gave her polite smiles as she stepped across the threshold. It was her imagination, but it felt like the air had changed as she nervously made her way to the entrance. As she switched out her shoes, she could feel her locker mates looking at her in curiosity as being new. She stood out, trying not to squeak or make any weird sounds. She went to the office to report in and receive her room assignment. As she entered the office, she was greeted with the hustle and bustle of activity. Not sure how to approach, she was spared when a kind-looking woman with white hair up in a proper bun waved her over. "Hello, dear," the woman said, her voice radiating a calming sense. "You must be a new student. I am Miss 𝐒𝐻𝐿. What is your name?" "Izumi Shimura, ma'am." She got out with a slight squeak to her voice. "Don't worry, dearie, I don't bite. Now, Izumi, welcome to our academy. I will hand you over to a member of our welcoming committee. They will take you to get your ID and gym clothes and give you a tour, after which they will escort you to your homeroom. They will be your buddy for the next few days, helping you navigate the school and get used to things." "I don't want to be a bother. It sounds like much work for them." "Nonsense. That is what the welcoming committee does. Now let's see who they assigned you." The woman looked down at her sheet and smiled. "Well, you are in great hands. I am sure your escort will be here soon. Why don't you take a seat over there?" The wait sparked more of a nervous excitement inside Izumi, wanting to start this new step in life, but fearing that it would not go well. She sat looking at the floor, fretting slightly. Her nervous habit of nibbling on the edge of her hair had reared its ugly head. Her nervousness dissolved into mumbles. What if no one likes me? Or if I do something that makes everyone mad? Could they all hate me already? They may know me from the news. What if they were fans of the hymn? Where has he disappeared to? Mr. Toshi says everything is fine. Mom seems to feel that way, not to mention Auntie 𝗵𝗲. Even Mr. Aizawa seems confident about it. Though he did tell me how to strike the throat for maximum damage, if necessary. What if no one likes my quirk? Well, if I don't see how, you can make everyone mad. People shouldn't judge someone just because of what they have seen on the news. In my opinion, to have come through something so terrible and still push forward is very admirable. Thank you for saying so. But what do I say when I meet them? What if they are mean? I don't think I am mean, though I am a bit awkward sometimes despite my upbringing. Being around others my age is a new experience. But how about you just say hello? It took a moment for Izumi's brain to register, and with a surprised eep, she jolted back, bringing her legs to her chest, and looked up at the person who had been listening to what she thought had been an internal dialogue and had even responded. Izumi expected to find a look of scorn or disgust. Instead, she saw big dark onyx eyes and a gentle smile, her hair still in the corner of her mouth. Izumi had to reboot. Momo smiled at the girl who sat mumbling. She had tried to get the girl's attention. As she got closer, she could hear the girl muttering to herself. As Momo listened to the girl rambling, the girl's words drew her in. It took Momo a moment to recognize that what the girl referenced was the case with fire breath. Momo was aware of the issue more so than most because her parents were heavily involved with the hero community, their support department, and hero health care. Momo looked at the girl fondly as she let out an eep and jumped back. The piece of hair hanging in her mouth made Momo smile at how cute the girl looked. It is a pleasure to meet you. I am Momo Yaoyorozu, a member of the welcoming committee, she said, still smiling as she offered her hand. Izumi Shimura, it is a pleasure to meet you, her voice coming out soft and slightly unsteady. I didn't mean to startle you, but you seemed lost in your world. I'm sorry. Don't be, it is understandable with all you have been through. You know who I am? Yes, but trust me, I have no positive thoughts about fire breath. I am only more aware of the case due to my parents' company and their ties to the hero community. Are your parents the head of the Yaoyorozu Corporation? Izumi asked. Momo winced as this was where things would generally shift to someone sucking up to her or looking to exploit something. Yes, she responded as she stood to her full height, ready to distance herself. That's cool, Izumi said. I was in one of their hospital wards after the incident. They took excellent care of me. Izumi got to her feet, grabbing her bag. Thank you, Yaoyorozu, for welcoming me to Megami Takai Academy. I will be in your care. Izumi pulled the piece of hair from the corner of her mouth and politely bowed. If you do not mind, why are you worried about an adverse reaction to your quirk? Is it perhaps bizarre in nature or unconventional? I create energy shields. I can change their shape or strength depending on the situation. I just haven't had it for very long, so I am still learning everything I can do. My trainer has been beneficial. You have a quirk trainer? Momo asked inquisitively. Yes, he was a friend of my grandmother's. They had lost touch, and he found us after the incident. What's your quirk? I can create non-organic things from the lipids in my body as long as I know the chemical composition. It manifests from my skin, so I have to have it exposed a lot to use it properly, which is rather embarrassing. Momo replied with a blush. That would be troublesome, senpai? Senpai? Momo looked at Izumi with a questioning look. I'm sorry. I just assumed you were older than me due to you being so mature, Izumi fumbled. Momo knew it was because of her development. Even at her age, she was assumed to be a few years older due to her development. No, I am the same age. It just seems that puberty decided to bless me overly. The doctors think it has something to do with my quirk due to the amount of calories I consume and the rich nature of my diet. I have been given this. She motioned to her body. Trust me, I wish it hadn't. It makes me uncomfortable around members of the opposite sex. I attended a different school, but decided to transfer here last year due to their actions. Izumi felt terrible for her comment. I am sorry, Yaoyorozu. I didn't mean anything by it. Momo could feel genuine remorse from the girl as she lowered her head, making Momo think she had kicked a puppy. I may have come off a little harsh, Izumi. I apologize. It's hard to make friends. Even when they discover my family name, it becomes them sucking up or attempt to use me for something. Then there are the snide comments about my body. That plastic surgery has been involved. And how desperate I must be to do something at such a young age. I think you are very nice, Momo, not just because of your body or family line. You have made me feel like it's okay for me to me in this little time we have been talking, even though I have messed up. I don't have any friends either. So if it's not too presumptuous, I would like to be your friend. I don't come from a rich or high-ranking family. I have no desire to get into the medical or support field. I want to be a hero to protect those that can't protect themselves. I want to be a hero myself. Actually, Momo thought. She only had a handful of people that she would consider a friend. And most of those were on the welcoming committee with her. And only one of them was even in her year. Part of her wanted to say no immediately, but could also sense how lonely Izumi seemed and recognized that loneliness. Momo decided to take a risk. If it didn't work out, she could distance herself. I think we can be friends, Izumi, Momo said hesitantly, saying the girl's first name. This action was not lost on Izumi as she heard Momo call her by her first name. It made Izumi almost painfully aware of the pit that had been buried inside her for so long. For being ostracized for so many years. She had lost her only friend when she was 4 and had never found another one in 8 years. She wouldn't cry. She didn't want to seem like a total weirdo. Thank you, Momo, she said shyly. The campus was impressive and leagues beyond anything Izumi had any previous experience with. Everything was very high-end as it catered to those of station. She was relieved when Momo informed her that 25% of the student body was on scholarship, and that everyone had to test to get in. High standards were to be maintained, and bullying had a zero-tolerance policy. That only some students were part of some prestigious family helped to put Izumi at ease. She stopped, picked up her gym uniform, located her locker, and retrieved her books from the student store. Their final stop was the cafeteria, where Momo went over the options for lunch, and that breakfast was offered if she arrived early enough. All the meals were included in the tuition. The only thing that took any money was the vending machines and the drink bar in the quad. Izumi had begun to relax during the tour, finding it easy to talk with Momo whenever a question arose. They stopped before 2A. Momo turned to her and smiled. We are in the same class, so you will at least know someone. Momo entered first and spoke with a teacher as Izumi straightened herself out, ensuring she looked presentable. She heard the teacher call her in with a deep breath. She stepped in. She looked over her class and saw more looks of curiosity at the new arrival than the looks of disgust she was accustomed to at her last school. Introduce yourself, and then sit behind Ieyasu, the teacher said. Greeting, my name is Izumi Shimura. I hope to make friends with all of you, and look forward to getting to know you all. She finished with a bow and made her way to sit down. Good job, Miss Shimura. Please pull out your modern Japanese history book and turn to chapter 4. No spitballs, no taunts, there were no snide comments. Izumi smiled, doing as instructed. This was a chance to start over, a new beginning, a rebirth. A few girls introduced themselves at lunch, asking Izumi what she thought of the campus and course, one of the most critical questions. What is your quirk? It was the first time that, in a school setting, she could answer the question in class and not immediately have the room turn against her when she would say it hadn't manifested yet. Momo gave her an encouraging smile. I call it shield. It allows me to create force fields in different sizes and strengths. Instead of dismissal, she got a few favorable comments and asked if she wanted to be a support hero. One girl seemed interested and asked if she could lift things with her shield and how strong they could get. Izumi smiled and continued the conversation until the bell rang, calling everyone back to their seats. Of course, it was not all rainbows and butterflies. There were cliques and groups like any social structure. Nothing too disturbing, but it was present. Some tried to quietly dissuade her from hanging out with Momo, and others just left her alone because she didn't wear specific makeup or follow certain celebrities. But nothing like she had experienced before, so it was all pleasant to Izumi. Those who attempted to dissuade her were quickly rebuffed. But of course, That meant Izumi would be part of whatever gossip would be spread. The biggest problem arrived when she was asked about boys, and Izumi replied that she didn't like boys as they made her uncomfortable. Immediately she was questioned about her sexuality, when Izumi answered truthfully that it was something she had never thought about, only adding fuel to the fire. Momo introduced her to Kanoko Komori at lunch, another member of the welcoming committee and a student in the same year as them. The girl was quiet, making Izumi wonder how she was a welcoming committee member. But when the conversation about Kanoko's quirk mushroom, suddenly the girl came alive. Momo smiled as Izumi came alive herself, and they were talking excitedly about Kanoko's quirk. It was an excellent beginning overall, having a regular gym class. Though some of the girls questioning her sexuality acted exaggeratedly while they were training, it wasn't physical assault, so Izumi brushed it off. It was a beginning, and that was all Izumi wanted. Everything starts somewhere soon. School was like a familiar sweater. Izumi had her routine and had made some friends. Momo and Kanoko were her circle. The three would text and study together. She got along with others in class well enough, a heaven-sent gift in Izumi's mind. But the two members of the welcoming committee were her confidants. She even joined the committee to help herself come out of her shell more. The side benefit of hanging out with her friends more was not lost on her. 𝐒𝐭𝐸 almost cried the first time Izumi asked for permission to go to Momo's house to go swimming, or when she asked to go to the movies with her friends. It took some time, but Izumi eventually could fully confide in her friends about her living with Midnight and over a very emotional sleepover about her past traumas. Izumi was afraid of rejection, but she wept at the tight embraces and soothing words instead. Not to say their outings were not without trouble, with boys hitting on the trio or harassing them. But it never escalated to the point of danger. Thankfully, it also helped that Momo had a private driver, so they could avoid using public transportation. The three girls had a common goal of becoming heroes and decided to start working out together. All Might supported their efforts by creating exercise plans for them. Momo and Kanoko also got to know Izumi's uncles and 𝗏𝗏 quite well. They spent much time together, often staying at each other's houses or going out. Their parents were used to seeing them together and didn't question it when one or both girls showed up at the other's house. As she embraced her heritage, Izumi blossomed into womanhood with her unique charm. Though different from Momo, she became undeniably cute with a fuller bust, curvier figure, and even slightly taller. Thanks to the help of Momo and Midnight, Izumi also learned to manage her curls beautifully. Momo stepped out of the house in her new bathing suit and saw Izumi emerging from the water. Momo couldn't help but stare at her best friend, perplexing her. However, Izumi didn't seem to notice and quickly hugged Momo before using her shields to launch them both into the pool. It was a typical day for them, minus Kanoko, who was dating a boy she had met at her parents' shop. "Do you think her date is going okay?" Izumi asked as she floated by Momo on a floaty. "She said she would call us after, but I hope she seemed excited," Momo responded. "What about you, Izumi? Do you think you will ever go on a date?" "I don't know," she said. "I haven't met a boy I would even consider going on a date with. But then again, don't meet any unless we go out. I think they are hitting on you too, and they talk to me so as not to exclude me. What about you? Don't you have another ball coming up?" "I do, but I do it more because my parents ask me to. I am supposed to meet the youngest member of the Ida clan, but I don't think it will work." "Why is that?" "We have talked a few times, but I don't feel any spark or connection with him." "It's okay, Momo. We can get married when we are older and cause a scandal. We will use artificial insemination so I can bear you children while you run the world." Momo laughed. "What about being a hero? And pass the opportunity to be a kept woman?" "Hell no," Izumi said, laughing. "I think Mr. Aizawa has a thing for my mom," she added nonchalantly. "Wait? Yay, he has been training her for a few years now. And how he looks at her when he thinks no one is watching gives it away." Is she interested in him? I don't know. She seems open to it now that she started working in stuff. But after my sperm donor. He hasn't popped up, has he? No, not a word. But did you hear about Mr. Quick? He got arrested for attempted rape yesterday. He was shot in the leg when he attacked a fan in an alley. No, I hadn't heard that. But I don't follow hero news like you do. I know you are too busy stalking Caliban from the Sound of Fury, Izuku said, teasing her friend's celebrity crush. It's not stalking. I like to stay updated on my future husband's whereabouts, Momo said confidently. We are not even married yet, and you already have lovers lined up. Look, if I am ruling the world, I should be surrounded by as many lovers as I want, baby. You know you will always be number one, Momo said, doing her best to sound sultry. I guess I can live with that. Two girls erupted in laughter. Kanoko phoned later and shared that her date went well, leading to plans for another one. The trio conversed for some time, exchanging giggles and inquiring about Kanoko's experience. However, that night, as Izumi snuggled next to Momo before sleeping, Momo found herself more conscious of her friend's presence. It was in the 15th year of Izumi's life that everything changed again. 𝐭𝐽 woke her daughter up in the middle of the night, immediately putting her on edge. 𝐭𝐽 calmed her some when she told her daughter that this had nothing to do with him. But instead, All Might had been critically injured and was in the hospital. The two got dressed quickly and raced off into the night. Izumi worried about what or who could have critically injured the number one hero. 𝐭𝐽 and Izumi, after they showed proper identification, were rushed into the nondescript building, past armed guards, and into the back, being led down a maze of corridors. They eventually found themselves staring at Gran Torino and 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏, who both looked like they should be confined to a bed themselves. The two heroes paid the two of them no mind as they stared through an observation window. 𝐭𝐽 and Izumi hesitantly made their way to the window, unprepared for what they saw. All Might was in the middle of an extensive surgical procedure. The doctors were moving in what could only be considered controlled chaos. There was so much blood, and it was clear that the damage was extensive. In the middle, like a conductor for an orchestra, was Recovery Girl, directing the chaos with skill and composure, though her face told a different story. What happened? 𝐭𝐽 managed. 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏, without taking his eyes off the happenings. We tracked down the person responsible for your mother's death. We have been tracking him down for a long time, dismantling his vast network in hopes that it would lead us to him. That man was the most dangerous person on the planet. His evil and vile knew no bounds. We won, but we don't know if All Might will survive. His voice was steady, hints of passion and anger seeping through his composure. That fool is too stubborn to die. If he doesn't, I will make sure to drag him back so I can beat that into him, Torino said, his voice heavy with fear. Izumi just stood there, frozen as she bore witness to the scene. It moved in slow motion and, at times, like a time lapse at other times. She offered every prayer she could remember to every spirit or deity she could think of. Everything was just a blur for Izumi. She didn't answer her phone, which was blowing up with increasingly concerned messages from Momo and Kanoko. Eventually, it registered enough for her to respond that she was okay, telling them that her uncle Toshi had been in a terrible accident, and she was at the hospital with her mom as he was in emergency surgery. The girls offered to come down and wait with her, but she had to refuse so as not to reveal her uncle's secret. Shortly after, she discovered that Aizawa and Midnight were also in the hospital, but their injuries were not life-threatening. 𝐭𝐽 and Izumi visited them, with Aizawa at once bristling over 𝐭𝐽, fussing over him while enjoying her attention. Midnight, she contented herself with Izumi's fussing. 38 hours later, Recovery Girl emerged completely exhausted. Other doctors had rotated out, but she had been there the entire time. Torino, 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, 𝐭𝐽, and Izumi sat with bated breath. He is stable, but the damage is overwhelming. I don't know if he will be able to recover, and if he does, it will be at a fraction of what he was. He is awake and asking for everyone. 𝐒𝐭 and Izumi walked right in as Recovery Girl held the hero's back. He wants to pass it on to her. I got him to hold off for now. I understand. He wants to return to the 𝗬𝗵𝗲 line. I think the girl may not be ready, but I won't go against his wishes. He has been training her for the last few years, and her dedication is admirable. I worry about her trauma, though. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 said. The zygote will be great. Her desire to protect is possibly even stronger than his, and she will be an amazing hero. 𝗏𝗏 said. Besides, we will help her along. That we will, 𝗏𝗏 added before they stepped inside the room. Toshinori Yagi, no one expects to be in this position. No one believes they will ever be here. Yet here he was. He watched as 𝗏𝗏 and Izumi came to his bedside. 𝗏𝗏's eyes filled with worry and Izumi's so terrified. Like the extraordinary people he knew they were, they smiled for him. 𝗏𝗏 immediately scolded him for getting hurt, and Izumi held his hand smiling. He could feel their love. It warmed him. They cared for the man, not the hero. The difference was what mattered to him. I will be all right. This is a flesh wound, he said with a sly smile directed at Izumi, who giggled for him. There it is, sweet Izumi. There is no need to fret. The road to recovery is still long, but it will be one that I conquer. Though I believe my time as the #1 hero will be ending. SHH, don't say that, Uncle Toshi. There was a time where I foolishly believed that I could continue forever. Such is the folly of youth. But tonight, though I was injured, I avenged your grandmother. The man that took her has been removed. But with that, I want to ask you something. Anything, she replied, giving his hand a gentle squeeze. I want you to inherit my quirk, the same quirk I inherited from Nana, and the one she inherited from her mentor. And one day, you will pass it on to whom you deem worthy. How is it possible to pass on a quirk, Toshi? 𝗏𝗏 asked, worried he was becoming delusional. My quirk is called One for All, and has been passed down since the earliest days of quirks. The vile creature that I did battle with once had a brother, one he thought was quirkless. It angered and bothered him as he could steal people's quirks and give them to others. He forced a quirk upon his brother, a stockpiling quirk. Little did he know his brother did have a quirk, the ability to transfer power to other people, and One for All was born. A quirk that couldn't be stolen, but could only be given freely and with the intent to do so. Thus began a long journey of One for All that now resides within me, and I now want to pass on to you. Am I worthy? You have come so far in the years I have known you, and you will go even farther. You have overcome and continue to face your obstacles and traumas. You once told me that you wanted to be a hero for all those who needed someone to be there, to listen and help those that felt help was beyond them. Has that changed? Of course not. Nothing could change that. Will you also step in to protect all those in danger? Yes. Then, my sweet Izumi, you are worthy, the hero said with a smile. The world needs to know that even if I am gone, there is a hero that will step up and say, I am here, she whispered. They need to know that everything will be all right. All Might wants me to carry on his legacy, not as the #1 hero, but to let people know everything will be all right. Okay, I will do it. Good girl, we will discuss it later, but please excuse me, ladies. I need to talk to 𝗧𝗏𝗏 and 𝗏𝗏. 𝗏𝗏 and Izumi leaned down and kissed the hero's cheeks before leaving the room. Izumi 𝗏𝗏 left her daughter as she went to check on Aizawa again. Izumi made her way to a courtyard and sat under the shade of a tree before pulling out her phone. Three Musketeers group chat. Izumi. He will be okay, not great, but he will live. Momo. Thank goodness, Izumi. I was so worried. Kinoko. I was. Also, I know you and him are close. Momo. Are you and 𝗏𝗏 okay? Do you need anything? Kinoko. Momo. You took the words right out of my mouth. Izumi. No, now that we know he will be all right, we will head home to sleep and recharge. Kinoko, if you need a hug or talk, hit me anytime. Izumi, I wouldn't want to interrupt your date with Rikito. Asterisk winky face emoji asterisk Kinoko. Really, you are going to start teasing me. Izumi, it tells me everything is right with the world. Kinoko, he has a friend I could introduce you to. Momo, unless it's Caliban, I am not interested. Izumi, nah, I'm good. How was your ball, Momo? Momo, fine, much like I anticipated. There was no spark with this one either. He was polite. But I will wait for my true love. Kinoko, are there going to be any more? Momo, I don't think so. Mother was talking to father, and she seemed to have convinced him to stop pressing the matter and let me decide. Izumi, thank goodness, I guess. I know you didn't like these matchmaking balls. Momo, I did not. I felt pressured to connect even if there weren't. Izumi, I am going to head back in. Thanks for chatting with me. It was nice. Should be back in school on Monday. Momo, Kinoko, what do you say we visit Izumi to help her with all the assignments she has due? Kinoko, that sounds good. Rikito is busy this weekend anyways at his parents' bakery. They have a bunch of weddings. Izumi, Saturday? 9. Momo and Kinoko, we will be there. Izumi closed her phone and stared at the trees. Her mind wandered to what Uncle Toshi had told her. She sat thinking about One for All and whether to share the truth with her friends. No hero ever stood alone. Toshi had Sir and Torino. She had Kinoko and Momo. For some reason, she missed the raven-haired girl the most. She just wanted her around. Something about knowing she was near. Island. She screamed, and inventions flew through the air. Her Uncle Might was hurt. Her Uncle Might, the symbol of peace, the man that told her she could do anything, had been critically injured and almost died. Her father had said to her that he wouldn't make a full recovery, that his time as a hero would be ending. Melissa Shield sat staring at a destroyed room, her heart racing, her mind suddenly becoming clear. Someone had to step up, and someone had to carry on Uncle Might's legacy. She would do just that. Quirkless or not, the world would know the name Melissa Shield, the quirkless hero. A new obsession formed, a new fire burned, she had a new purpose, and she would not be denied. Recovery Toshinori Yagi was never what one was to be considered patient. He tended to live his life in a plus-ultra state. But being injured as he was and confined to the hospital was almost complete torture. Somehow, they would always catch him when he wasn't supposed to be doing something. Whether it was Recovery Girl, 𝐒𝐭, or the absolute worst was Izumi. He had been out of bed just doing a few push-ups when the girl walked in, and her scolding had him sitting in bed, arms crossed, pouting. His feeble attempts to rebut her attacks or defend himself were skillfully dismantled in a way that hurt his head. A doctor had come in, heard a fraction of it, and walked back out. When she was done, she threatened to hold him in bed with her shielding if he didn't stop. For 6 months, he was in the hospital, and for 6 months, the questions of his absence swirled. Thankfully, a friend from the S announced that All Might was on a particular assignment. He remembered to send her a thank you. His dear friend David, along with his niece Melissa, came to visit him so David could deliver some synthetic organs to help All Might be able to leave the hospital. Melissa was more difficult to calm as the blonde girl cried and held on to him, afraid he might disappear. It took the arrival of Izumi to calm her finally. Ultimately, Izumi and Melissa seemed to bond over their love of heroes and Uncle Might. When Melissa revealed that she was quirkless, she expected Izumi to react negatively. But when the green-haired girl instead showed nothing but support, Melissa felt relieved. After hearing from Izumi how it took until she was 10 for her quirk to manifest and the circumstances involved, Melissa realized that Izumi had gotten to experience some of the pain of being quirkless, while Melissa had been sheltered from the more brutal aspects due to her father's position and growing up on Island. It was a shared experience from which they could build. The two girls bonded during Melissa's visit, with Melissa even meeting Momo and Kanoko. Melissa had led a sheltered life, so the concept of being able to make friends even if they were far away was appealing. Also, with her hidden mission to become a quirkless hero, it would behoove her to make some contacts with possible classmates. Shota and 𝐭𝐽 1 month after he had been admitted, 𝐭𝐽 sat on the edge of Shota Aizawa's bed, feeding him some apples. While the man grumbled about being able to feed himself, he only did so half-heartedly. 𝐭𝐽 sat there patiently, waiting for him to open his mouth before she could feed him another slice. "The doctor says I can go home tomorrow," he said. "Yes, he told me," 𝐭𝐽 said. "I already had 𝗵𝗲 give me the spare key to your apartment so I can come to cook for you. I am fully capable of cooking for myself, you know? Are you saying you don't like my cooking?" "No, I never said that. But why would you do such a thing?" "Because I take care of what is mine," 𝐭𝐽 said. Shota sat there, his mouth slightly agape. He saw 𝐭𝐽 flick her hand upward and his mouth close. Before anything else, she leaned over and lightly kissed his lips. She then stood and walked out the door. She was there every day, cooking for him, and at the end of the day, she would walk over and kiss him again. "See you tomorrow," she would say, and then leave. Shota sat at lunch with 𝗵𝗲 and Hisashi, teasing the underground hero mercilessly as he described what 𝐭𝐽 was doing. "For the love of God, Shota, please tell me you are kissing her back," Hisashi said as 𝗵𝗲 clutched her side. "Well, yes, but what, you blockhead," 𝗵𝗲 said. "I think I should tell her that while I appreciate her cooking and cleaning," 𝗵𝗲 said. "And doing your laundry," added Hisashi. "Did you know she even feeds his cat?" 𝗵𝗲 said to Hisashi. "You mean Princess likes her?" he said as he looked at Shota, to which their friend could only nod. Hisashi rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Let me get this straight. You have a beautiful woman like 𝗭𝐽 coming over and playing house with you, and all she seems to ask for is a kiss when she leaves." Shota nodded. "And she has been doing this for over a month now?" Nod. "Listen, you idiot. If you don't snatch her up, I will steal her." Shota thought about it, and his blood boiled. Hisashi was his best friend, and he realized he would fight him tooth and nail for 𝗭𝐽. "What do I do?" "Oh, I don't know, you idiot. Ask her to dinner. Kiss her first. Tell her to stay," 𝗵𝗲 said. "Isn't that a bit much? I could talk to 𝗭𝐽 and probably tell her to wait in your bed if you need it any clearer. She wants a relationship with you, to get back into the world, and to be with you, dumbass. And if you even say she should say something, I will hurt you badly." "What if I go too fast or too far, or I hurt her?" Shota said, looking down at his tea. "You let her set the pace," Hisashi said. "She is the drummer of the band. She controls the beat. Start with dinner or kiss her first and see what happens. When she wants more, she will say so, or if she needs to slow down, let her say so. If you want this, Shota, then stop being so scared and take a risk." The next day, he did just that when she arrived. Before he sat to eat, he kissed her first, which she responded to. "Now, eat breakfast. What time do you return from patrol tonight?" "About 5 a.m. I will ensure your food is ready so you can eat and go straight to bed. Just leave your hero costume outside your door so I can wash it." "Okay, hey 𝗭𝐽," he said, suddenly feeling nervous. "Yes, Shota. Are you available for dinner Thursday?" "Are you asking me on a date, Shota?" "Yes, I am." Her smile almost melted him. "I would love to go to dinner Thursday. Now eat your food before it gets cold." Izumi was incredibly happy for her mother, but also a little worried. But the happiness won out. The transfer Izumi and Toshi stood in the medical center of UA as recovery girl drew a vial of blood from the pro before turning to the young girl. "This is your chance to say no, Izumi," Toshi said. "Not on your life," Izumi replied, extending her arm. Recovery Girl gently inserted the needle and pressed the plunger. What now? We should head to training ground beta. Sir Nightai and Torino are waiting for us. As soon as you feel anything, say something immediately. Recovery Girl quickly attached a few electrodes, so I can monitor your vital remotely for anything. The two walked in silence to the training area. Soon they came to where the other two pros were waiting. Anything yet? Torino asked as Izumi shook her head. Well then, why don't you warm up to get the blood flowing? Izumi immediately did as instructed. She didn't notice anything. Not knowing what else to do, they started with a light spar of having Izumi create a shield to deflect Torino's attacks, while Nightai launched tennis balls at her from another angle which she had to dodge physically. After about an hour, Izumi threw the sign to stop, and everyone froze. Her face squinched up as Recovery Girl said that Izumi's pulse and blood pressure had increased. How do I call it forth, Uncle Toshi? She asked. You have to feel it. I never had to think about it, he replied truthfully. To which Torino sighed, and Nightai rubbed his forehead. When you create a shield, you describe it as pushing the energy out and into what shape you desire instead of spreading it to your body, Sir Nightai said, stepping forward. Izumi nodded and did as asked. She closed her eyes and concentrated on spreading it inside of her instead of releasing it from the outside around her, the mental image of her body forming her stopping point. Toshi smiled broadly as the girl closed her eyes as dancing white lights appeared under her skin, spreading out till her body gave a white glow. They saw the glow get brighter and brighter, and they heard Izumi grunt in pain. You are unleashing too much. Girlie, dial it back some, Torino yelled. Izumi seemed about to protest, but she remembered how she had promised her mom that she would listen to her uncles today. As she dialed it down, she adjusted it till she felt comfortable. Slowly she opened her eyes, noticing the glow coming from her body. Cool, she said, smiling. Is it supposed to do that? It is different for everyone, Toshi said, stepping forward and smiling broadly. She really would be a beacon of light, he thought. Can you move? Torino said. Izumi moved slowly. It felt good, excellent. Yes. How about creating a shield? Nightai said. Izumi thought momentarily. Oh yay, she said with a wicked grin. Izumi's shields were hard to see most times, depending on their intensity. This time it exploded from her in a brilliant green hue. The heroes braced to be struck, but it passed around them before they were encompassed. It feels different, like you told me that grandma's was called float. Then she could suddenly fly. Can you retract it and expand it? Nightai asked. Definitely, she said, and they watched her push it farther and even surround them with a few buildings, then pull it around her tightly. I could go bigger and stronger if needed, but he feels pretty strong. I think it's more like a barrier than a shield. But can you move? Torino said. They watched her blur from her spot and appear before the hero. What do you think, old man? She said with a smirk. Old man, is it, Magamusum? Granddaughter, you are going to regret that. Bring it, Ōjin grandfather. They disappeared from their spot into the city. Toshi watched and smiled as they began to battle. Izumi's speed wasn't on par with Torino, and she couldn't move like him. But she was learning, and her shield creation was quicker and didn't break. In the end, Izumi was down to a knee panting, but her shield around herself was holding. She smiled as Torino came at her, and suddenly he stopped violently, encased in another shield. All Might couldn't help himself and leaped in, yelling, Detroit Smash, suddenly bulking up. A third shield suddenly manifested, and it didn't break. It was cracked, but it held. All Might could also see the cracks shrinking. Wonderful, my girl, wonderful. All the shields dropped as Izumi stumbled forward, a broad smile on her face. She collapsed into All Might's arms. I did good, didn't I, Otsun Dad? She said as she passed out. That you did, 𝐒𝐻𝑒𝐼 beloved daughter. Sir Nightai and Torino smiled as Toshi carried Izumi in his arms, grinning like a dope. Recovery Girl did scold them for pushing Izumi so hard, but told them she had overexerted herself, and there were no evident injuries. When Izumi awoke, she looked at the group around her in the medical wing. "Feed me 𝗧𝗵𝗲, she yelled. "No, seriously, I need food ASAP. I am starving." "What would you like to eat?" 𝗳𝗏𝗧 said, pulling out his phone. Izumi thought for a second and placed an order similar to what she had seen Momo eat. 𝗳𝗏𝗧 said nothing and placed the order while Recovery Girl handed her some protein bars. It took the edge off her hunger pains. "I want to tell Momo and Kanoko," she told Toshi. "They are my most precious friend, and we are all going for you. You know them. You have trained them." Torino went to speak, but Toshi held his hand to stop him. "I understand, Izumi, and I expected as much. You may tell them. I know how dear they are to you, and it would be almost impossible for you to lie to them." Torino stayed silent. They disagreed, but he knew his 𝗵𝗲, and he didn't want her to be alone again. It was a small group, and if they knew, they could support her and stand by her side. "Can I continue training with them?" "Of course." "Now how was it?" "Magical, absolutely magical." *Author's note*. This feels like a good space to end this. What follows is what I had written initially, but I stopped and stepped back before I went a different direction. So this is an alternate universe thing, I guess. Let me know what you think either way. The O part is rough as I just stopped writing and didn't return to do edits, just a warning. Toshinori Yagi. No one expects to be in this position. No one believes they will ever be here. Yet here he was. He watched as 𝐒𝐭 and Izumi came to his bedside. 𝗏𝐭's eyes filled with worry and Izumi's so terrified. Like the extraordinary people he knew they were, they smiled for him. 𝗏𝐭 immediately told him that everything was going to be all right. Izumi told him he was too strong to let this beat him. He smiled, but inside he knew the truth. It had become apparent to him when Nana appeared at the foot of his bed. "Izumi, come here," he whispered. The girl came closer, leaning over him. He heard her whisper back that it would be okay because she was there, doing her best to smile like he had taught her. A hoarse laugh escaped his lips. "Listen, Izumi, I don't think I am going to be able to finish teaching you, but there is something that I need you to do." "Uncle Toshi, don't say that. I need you to be there. You are supposed to give me away when I get married and give the speech when I graduate from you. I wish I could, Izumi. I wish I could. But I need you to listen now. I was born quirkless, and your grandmother bestowed upon me her quirk. I know you have questions, but I need you to listen. She saw the potential in me and allowed me the chance to become the hero I am now. Please take up my legacy and the legacy of your grandmother. The world still needs a hero to stand up and protect those who can't protect themselves. Sir 𝗳𝗏𝗧 and Torino will train you. I promise. I know you can do it. Can you do that for me? Izumi, can you be a hero that protects others, not for the money or fame, but because it is right? Uncle Toshi, I don't understand. But I promise I will always protect those who can't defend themselves and everyone I can." "Recovery Girl," the hero said. The heroine walked over and drew some blood. "You need some of my DNA to inherit my power, Izumi. This is your last chance. Do you agree?" Izumi's head was in a panic. She didn't understand what was going on. She only knew that if he was dying, this was the most important thing to him. She nodded. "I will do it, Uncle Toshi. I will take up your legacy." Recovery Girl injected the blood into her. Izumi saw her uncle smile. He turned to the heroes. "Torino, 𝗳𝗏𝗧, train her, shepherd her. Make sure when the time comes that she is ready. 𝗏𝐭, I am sorry I won't be there, but no, Hisashi will never bother you two ever again. Izumi, I love you. I wish that if I ever had a daughter, she would be as wonderful as you." Izumi couldn't stop the tears as Recovery Girl ran to grab help. "I'll make you proud, I promise. Now hang on, don't go anywhere." "I did it, Nana." "It's home where it belongs," he muttered. He extended his hand to the space at the foot of his bed, and he smiled. It was the smile that had sheltered the world for decades, that had brought hope and peace to so many, that had become a symbol. His hand fell limply to the bed as his last breath escaped him. At 3:36 p.m. on October 2nd, the symbol of peace died. 𝐒𝐻𝐫 Bakugo, the emergency broadcast alert, rang across every phone, television, and radio. The students in his school all froze and looked at the television monitor in the hall. The Prime Minister came walking onto a stage, obviously shaken. He stood at the podium with tears falling. "People of Japan, I have come before with a heavy heart. Today at 3:36 p.m., the greatest hero the world has ever known, All Might, has died." After that, 𝐒𝐻𝐫 didn't hear anything else. The world became mute as students and teachers cried. He heard yells that it had to be a prank, and that this had to be a lie. But 𝐒𝐻𝐫 knew it wasn't. "Momo," she stood in front of the television, shaking her head. All Might was dead. The symbol of peace was no more. Kanoko, as she gazed at her boyfriend, he stood silently, not saying a word as tears cascaded down his cheeks. Their bag of groceries tumbled from his grasp. They had been on the way back to his house to bake up some sweets. Now they just held each other. Neither could speak. "Please, God, let this be a cruel joke," she thought. Unknown location. "Did you hear that, Master? He is dead," a doctor said to a body floating in a strange tank. He saw the hand twitch. "Yes, Master, I understand. We must find out if it died with him. The Hero Commission, ladies and gentlemen, All Might is dead. Now is the time for us to move forward and secure the seat at the head of this country. The hero community will be looking for guidance, and we will be the ones that guide them. Nezu wanted a war. Now he will get one. There is nothing and no one to challenge us. For the greater good." "For the greater good," the room shouted back. "You." Nezu reached into his desk and pulled out a bottle of bourbon and 2 glasses. After filling them, he slid one over to Lady Nagant. "To All Might," she said, raising her glass. "To All Might," Nezu echoed as they drained their glasses. "The commission is going to come for us full bore now. We have to hold on till the next generation takes the wheel." "What if they aren't ready?" she countered. "Then we hold till they are." Todoroki household, it didn't matter anymore. None of it mattered anymore. All the training, all the sacrifice, it just didn't matter anymore. He was supposed to see his greatest creation rise and take the ranking of #1 hero from All Might. Not have it given, but to snatch it away. Toya's death, Shoto's training, it wasn't worth anything now. Endeavor crawled into a bottle. Island. She screamed, and inventions flew through the air. Her Uncle Might was dead. Her Uncle Might, the symbol of peace, the man that told her she could do anything, was dead. A void in her heart formed similar to the one that had formed when her mother died. Melissa Shield raged against everything, raged against the loss, the hurt, whatever crossed her path. Someone had to step up, and someone had to carry on Uncle Might's legacy. She would do just that. Quirkless or not, the world would know the name Melissa Shield, the quirkless hero. A new obsession formed, a new fire burned, she had a new purpose, and she would not be denied. Goodbye. The funeral for All Might was a week-long affair as millions paid their respects. Heroes from all over the world converged on Japan, and crime stopped just from the sheer presence of so many heroes. The villains hid, wanting to make sure it was true, that he was dead. On the final day, all across the country, at 3:36 p.m., silence was held, and everyone stopped. On the other side of the city, a small funeral was held with only a handful of attendees. Toshinori Yagi was laid to rest next to Nana Shimura. There were no long flowery speeches, just tears. As the attendees laid flowers, they spoke to their hero, friend, uncle, teammate, and student. Momo was there to support her friend. She knew how close Izumi was to her uncle and how much she looked up to All Might. Izumi's uncle had been caught up in the destruction of All Might's final battle. The last mourner, a blonde girl, stood there with her hand on the marker. She seemed to be making an oath to the fallen man. Opening salvos, it started with a daytime robbery by a low-level gang of villains. When they succeeded, it emboldened the others out there. Soon more and more began to come out of the darkness. They had been held there by the threat of All Might, but now that threat was gone. Sure, there were heroes out there, but even the heroes had become lax. Gangs began to form, first in the back alleys, before they surged onto the streets. People waited for a hero to come to save them. Unfortunately, they had to keep waiting. The Hero Commission started to send their soldiers onto the streets. Rules of violence were loosened, and steps had to be taken to secure the safety of the people. The Hero Commission training facility opened, promising to train the next generation to take back Japan the security of a brighter tomorrow. They pressured the regular hero schools to put students on the streets paired with a Hero Commission officer. That this extraordinary time called for exceptional measures. When the schools fought back, they appealed directly to the students. Didn't they want to step up when the world needed them? Didn't they want to be the ones to turn the tide? Hero Commission heroes opened their agencies and supported the propaganda being spread, that it was time for those that could do so. They would sober Endeavor up long enough to trot him out. The new number one would smile and wave, read the script, and take out the villains who were unfortunate to cross his path. The people looked past the deaths. It was either them or the villains. The mugging was stopped one night. When the witness was questioned, they said it was a person in an All Might mask. Then it happened again. On the web, sightings began to appear across the country. Momo and Kanoko sat there flabbergasted as Izumi sat before them, terrified. She had just dropped a revelation on them that turned their ideas of quirks and parts of the world on its head. A few mushrooms sprouted around Kanoko, who took one and handed another to Momo. These should counter any hallucinogenic that we may have been exposed to, the girl said flatly as she popped the mushroom in her mouth. Momo, without questioning, did the same. How long? Was the only thing she said. 5 minutes, maybe sooner due to your metabolism. Good, Izumi, please sit and say nothing for 5 minutes, Momo said. Izumi did just that, taking a seat and experiencing the true menace of life waiting. Her mind whirled with irrational thoughts of being abandoned. She worried about losing her friends, that they would see her as a monster, curse and toss her aside. That she was indeed unworthy. As she fought back, tears were lost in her mind. She felt 2 sets of arms wrapped around her. Stupid, nothing could drive me away from you, Momo whispered, holding Izumi. Even if you hated mushrooms, I wouldn't abandon you, Kanoko added. Izumi realized that she had voiced all her fears while waiting, but she couldn't complain in the embrace of his friends. Instead, she just hugged them back as they all processed everything, getting themselves under control. So, your Uncle Toshi is All Might, and his quirk is called One for All. It is a transferable quirk that dates back long ago, and he has given it to you after avenging your grandmother's death. Who gave the quirk to him? Momo said, working it out as she spoke. Your uncles and aunt are all pro-heroes as well, Kanoko chimed in. Is Auntie Inko some secret hero as well? No, though she and Uncle Aizawa are dating. No distractions, Momo said. Izumi looked down sheepishly, hoping to change the subject. Yes, Uncle Toshi is All Might. You now have 2 quirks? Kanoko pondered out loud. No, but kind of, Izumi said. My quirk has fused with One for All and gotten stronger, but it also makes me stronger. Explain, Momo said. Izumi thought about it, and instead just stood up and activated One for All. The glow surrounded her, and she tossed Momo over her shoulder and Kanoko under her arm and walked outside carrying the 2 girls like nothing. Once they reached outside, she wrapped them in a barrier, shot them high above Momo's house, and rapidly brought them down safely. Izumi. Momo chastised her friend, partly because of the surprise, But it made Momo feel something she still didn't understand, which bothered her more. "I figured a demonstration would be easier," she said. Then she smiled so brightly at Momo, adding to the poor girl's confusion. "My shield stopped a Detroit smash." "Are you serious?" Momo exclaimed. "Like full-on stopped it." "My shield cracked, but it didn't break." "Izumi, that is so fucking awesome," Kanoko yelled. "You stopped an attack from All Might. But wait, doesn't he have his quirk anymore?" "He says he has embers, which will allow him to keep doing some hero work. But he will be stepping back. He said it could be for years, as my grandmother had all her abilities for a bit after she passed the quirk to him." "How does it make your quirk stronger then?" Izumi thought about it for a minute. "Your quirk, Momo, is limited by the lipids you have available to fuel it." Momo nodded. "Mine draws on an energy pool. Imagine you have an ocean of energy or a giant fuel tank of lipids that you can tap into." "My grandmother's quirk was float. And she could," she shrugged. "Well, float, but after, she could fly." "Are there any drawbacks?" Kanoko asked. "Well, I can't use it at full power. It will break something. I get wicked hungry, may be able to eat Momo out, and am terrified. I fear you guys will leave me, and I won't be good enough. I won't be able to live up to the legacy." "Izumi Shimura, your fear is unfounded, and while you may need to train more to harness this new ability, you will more than live up to the legacy, and we will be with you every step of the way. If you think we are just going to walk away from you, then you are sorely mistaken. We are together forever," Momo said. "Even if you suddenly were allergic to mushrooms, I wouldn't leave you." "Izumi, don't you get we love you?" Kanoko added, hugging the greenette tight. "Besides, we all have to train harder. Uncle Toshi said you can train with us if you want," she said, hugging Kanoko. Taking one hand, she tugged at Momo to bring her into the group hug. "Well then, of course," Momo said, joining in. It turned out that Izumi could not out-eat Momo after training, but she could seriously make a run at it. It was that simple. The three girls stood united and wouldn't let anything tear them apart. Their new training started to pay off physically as the girls' muscle tone developed even further, giving them impressive abs and well-defined muscles. For quirk training, Momo and Kanoko found themselves in the hands of 𝐒𝐵 a lot of the time. Though the pro hero was busy, he would always prepare lesson plans for them, and Torino would guide them through the steps. Toshi would pout as he remembered how harsh Torino was on him, and by comparison, he was a doting grandfather on the girls. In truth, he was just as strict, but didn't feel the need to bop them on the head as much, as they rarely repeated the same mistake, and had much better heads on their shoulders than Toshi ever did. While they were all maturing into beautiful young women, Izumi's body changed the most, as she was now on a rich diet, and all the years of repression seemed to finally fall off with the addition of one for all to her life. Her bust increased, as did her posterior, giving a generous curve, and her waist seemed to tape in even more as all the baby fat was gone. Izumi had developed into a knockout and was utterly oblivious to it. Kanoko was very pretty and had curves, and she knew that, and she would use it to tease her boyfriend of the past year and one half. Momo was still on that goddess tier. Her bust was more significant than Izumi, and her waist-to-hip ratio was enough to give her an hourglass and add height. She was a model. The three of them turned heads whenever they went out together. Izumi would be oblivious to this, instead of just bouncing around having fun. And she did bounce. A flurry of their sweet 16s was each affair to remember. Izumi's was quiet and more private, with just her two friends joining her family on a trip to an amusement park. That alone was enough for the girl, but all her aunts and uncles had made sure to take the day off to be there. Inko and Aizawa even held hands during the trip and may have snuck a kiss here and there. The Ferris wheel was an event. Somehow Momo and Izumi ended up alone with the others in different cars, and Kanoko opted to stay on the ground and visit a shop. Momo couldn't help but look over her friend as she excitedly bounced around. Momo took the opportunity to give Izumi her present. Izumi started crying was a beautiful necklace that had Izumi, Kinoko, and Momo's birthstones all together. Momo revealed that she had one for herself made and one for Kinoko as well. When Izumi had Momo put it on for her, those strange feelings came over Momo again. She noticed herself keenly aware of Izumi and even found herself distracted by her friend's dress or undress, depending on the situation. In the light of the Ferris wheel, she suddenly thought of kissing Izumi. This shocked Momo and yanked her back. When Izumi hugged her, though, she felt a warmth that wasn't like before, and she didn't understand. Thankfully, they started moving again so Momo could distract herself. Momo's was an affair to remember. Momo's mother was not taking no for an answer when she dressed her daughter and friends in elegant gowns with rather generous necklines. The whole affair was this grand ball attended by a stunning amount of young men and women from the upper crust of society. Izumi and Kinoko, not from this circle, drew much attention from some young men. Izumi managed to keep her fear in check, not to lock herself in a barrier when one would come to talk to her. Instead, she became very adept at making reasons to leave the conversation, sticking close to Momo and Kinoko when she could. Kinoko was having fun, but made sure to let each boy know that she was taken. One particular young man who had been in hot pursuit of Izumi had finally outmaneuvered the poor girl, and she found herself on the dance floor about to have a panic attack when Momo tapped him on the shoulder and asked to cut in. Of course, Momo led as they continued to dance. "Whatever am I going to do with you, Izumi? I leave you alone for 5 minutes, and you are out on the dance floor about to freak out." "Oh, thank you for saving me, Momo. I don't know what happened, but I much rather dance with you." Momo felt her heart thump when Izumi said that. "Don't worry, I'll always dance with you." Izumi smiled and laid her head on her friend's shoulder. One of those times, Izumi was keenly aware of Momo. She felt happy that Momo would always dance with her. Something about it comforted her and warmed her. When the dance ended, Izumi felt she missed her friend's warmth. At the night's end, Izumi gave Momo a gold bracelet with the simple inscription, "To my Momo, together forever. Love, Izumi." The bracelet promptly became a permanent part of Momo's everyday dress. Kinoko's celebration was what one would consider a typical teenage party. There were people from school, and her boyfriend even invited some friends. It was almost a mixer, but without forced conversation or adult supervision. Kinoko cried when she received her best friend's necklace to match Izumi and Momo's. She also received a bracelet from Izuku that read, "To my best friend, Kinoko, from Izumi." That inscription made Momo happy, and she couldn't understand why. The party was lovely, and between Momo's and Kinoko's party, Izumi was finding it easier to be around boys. They weren't causing her the emotional distress that they usually did, and it may have also helped that her barrier had managed to withstand a full 4 Manchester smash. She had even managed to punch Toshi through a building. With Izumi reaching control of 25%, their lives were going great. Momo's confusion found a new level when she witnessed Izumi talking to a boy. Not only was she talking to him, she was doing so off to the side. Something about Izumi doing this and laughing at some joke triggered an unfamiliar feeling to go with all the others that Momo was battling with. She honestly contemplated creating a dart gun to shoot the boy with. Fortunately for Momo and disappointment of the boy, Izumi ended the conversation and walked away. Momo was not pleased with how he looked at Izumi as she did. "Who was that?" Momo asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh, his name is Denki. He is going to apply to you, as well," Izumi responded. "So, are you going to talk to him more?" "Maybe he was funny, though he kept looking at my chest, which I didn't like. But all the boys here keep doing it, except Kinoko's boyfriend, which is fantastic. I like him even more now." "Well then, have fun," Momo said and walked away, going to talk to some other guests. She wasn't sure why she said that or why she was doing what she was doing. Izumi felt hurt that Momo had walked away from her, and she didn't like it. Fortunately, The two girls soon found themselves next to each other again, realizing they liked it better that way. The night soon ended, and the two girls found themselves helping Kanoko clean up after the last of the guests had left, and they provided their friend some cover to make out with her boyfriend. As the girls snuggled down for bed, Momo felt that warmth and tingle rerun through her as Izumi snuggled up for bed. It wasn't unusual, but it made Momo feel weird over time, but not in a way she wanted it to end. As the year turned, they focused on the actual goal 𝐴 and the entrance exam. With only a few months left, they doubled down and entered full preparation mode with more intense training and studying. Fortunately, while Kanoko and Izumi were not stupid, they were not on Momo's level. The heiress could help them in any subject. She had been invited to take the recommended exam, which she was about to decline until Izumi and Kanoko made such a fuss about its honor that she reluctantly agreed. Katsuki Bakugo, he had spent 2 years in the ward. When he emerged, he was on a better path and had picked up a sister. 2 of them, to be exact, a 1-year-old named Mizuki and one his age named Himiko Bakugo, formerly Toga. But that was in the past. He and Himiko had become friends in the asylum, and she was on her way to a life outside the law like him. At first, they clashed like cats and dogs, but soon they could find some common ground, like how the system needed to be changed, while she was more a victim due to her parents neglecting her need for blood due to her quirk. And he was a product of that system that had told him he could do no wrong because his quirk was so incredible. The system needed to be changed. That quirk discrimination was terrible both ways. He saw another version of Izumi in her, kicked down by those who were supposed to care for her, and discarded by society for not fitting in. He was not about to let that slide again. He knew this still wouldn't atone for his crimes, but this was a start to being the hero he wanted to be. Once his parents started to visit him, he told them about Himiko, what she had gone through, and what he wanted. At first, his parents were reluctant, but as soon as Mitsuki met Himiko, she knew she couldn't leave her behind, thus beginning the process. It was a long process that took the better part of 2 years before Himiko came to live with them. And about a year after that, she became Himiko Bakugo. The 2 siblings sat at the coffee table while Katsuki reviewed Himi's practice exam. "You only scored a 70. Retake it if you want that ice cream," he said. "But Katsuki, Himi, the exam is not that far away, and I thought you wanted to go to U.A. with me so we could graduate and improve things." "Fine, but after I pass this, you better give me my ice cream. And we are bringing some anime after Mizuki goes to bed." "Okay, but only 6 episodes tonight. I had a hard enough time waking you up for school last time. If I score a 90, can we do 8? "Yes, but hurry up, or you won't be able to bathe with Mizuki." Himi pouted at him before taking the exam and focusing, as she had definite prizes in mind. "Hey, bro? Yay. Are you hoping she will be there?" "I know she will, but yay," he said. "Just so you know, even if she isn't, I am proud of who you are. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you," Himi said before turning her attention back to her test. Katsuki smiled at his sister and looked towards the ceiling, wondering what Izumi was doing. Momo and Izumi. Back scratches. Izumi demanded with a pout plopping in front of her best friend. "Izumi, where is your shirt?" Momo responded. "It feels better with bare skin. We just took a bath, and there is no way I am putting on a bra to go to sleep," the girl countered. "Fine, but only 5 minutes this time. If you do 10, I will give you a back rub. I should curse Nimiri for teaching you how to do those, but they feel so good. Fine, 10 minutes, and I get a full back rub." "Deal," Izumi exclaimed. "Now scratch." Izumi was true to her word, grabbing some of Momo's oils and giving her friend a thorough rub. As Izumi sat straddling Momo's back and rubbing in the oil, she felt warm and didn't understand why. With every moan that Momo would let slip, she felt warmer. Momo was enjoying her back rub immensely, as she could feel Izumi's hand sliding up and down her back, making Momo let loose little moans of pleasure. It was when Izumi began to rub Momo's legs that something else began to happen. Momo felt herself beginning to feel an ache build inside of her. Nothing she had ever felt before. And when Izumi stopped, it didn't leave a lasting warmth. And when they went to bed, and Izumi cuddled up next to her, the ache began again. Momo's mind raced as she could feel her arousal growing. Looking at her sleeping friend beside her, she felt her gaze linger on Izumi's lips and the top of her chest. As Izumi was wearing just a tank top to bed, it provided a lovely view. Thoughts very unbecoming of a lady began to run through Momo's mind. Ideas that she had only read about her romance novels under the bed. Once the realization that Momo was lusting after her friend, it snapped Momo back to reality. She felt terrible for objectifying Izumi in this way. She closed her eyes and realized she could call so many memories of Izumi in undress or naked from the times they had bathed together. While she could remember Kanoko this way, those memories were unclear or failed to make her feel the way Izumi did. Am I a lesbian? Is Izumi? I want to kiss her and be touched in ways I shouldn't think of. No man has ever inspired these thoughts, not even her flights of fancy about her celebrity crush Caliban. She wanted him to sing to her and dote on her. She thought of kissing him and other thoughts she had just been entertaining about Izumi and nothing. She wanted to pull away from her friend, but also hold her close. It was a very confusing feeling. Who can I talk to? Does Izumi get the same feeling? Does she like girls or boys and is afraid of them right now? Do I like girls? Do I like Izumi? The thoughts and worries were almost enough to keep Momo up all night. It wasn't until Izumi snuggled in closer, and her rhythmic breathing lulled Momo to sleep. To say things were awkward, at least on Momo's end, would be to put it lightly. Izumi either didn't notice or chose not to. What Izumi did notice was that there was a wall between her and Momo that wasn't there before. Kanoko noticed something as well, going as far as to pull Momo aside and talk to her privately. Momo was able to dissuade Kanoko by blaming the upcoming entrance exams, with Momo taking the recommended exam, while Kanoko and Izumi were taking the regular exam. In truth, Momo was confused and trying to figure it out. When she caught a look of pain on Izumi's face, after she had made up an excuse to spend time away from her friend, she realized that she was hurting her friend. Momo understood that Izumi was afraid of abandonment and left to the side. While Izumi respected Momo when she said she needed to do something, it had become such a regular occurrence that Izumi was beginning to feel like Momo was leaving her. Izumi knew it was her insecurities. She talked to her therapist about it, her Aunt Nimiri. She didn't like it. Kanoko had a boyfriend that took much of her friend's time, but she didn't feel like Kanoko was pulling away. The mushroom girl would always make time for their training and to hang out. In Kanoko's absence, Momo and Izumi had become even closer than they already were. Now, Momo was pulling away for some reason. Momo knew her answers wouldn't manifest out of anywhere, or by pushing Izumi away. I would make them come even easier. She missed her friend, and once she realized she was hurting her, she knew it wasn't right for her to continue doing so. The next day, when Kanoko and Izumi were talking, Momo came up behind Izumi and wrapped her in a big hug. Want to spend the weekend at my house? Momo asked. That would be nice, Izumi replied. The two girls looked at Kanoko. Do you think your boyfriend can spare you for at least one night? Momo said, her head resting on Izumi's shoulder, looking up at Kanoko. Izumi's hands held onto the ones Momo had wrapped around her, smiling. Kanoko had a wild thought about how much Momo and Izumi looked almost like a couple that way. For my two girls, I am sure he will understand, she said as Momo and Izumi opened their arms to pull her into a group hug.